6 betrayals, 6 people who thought they had won, 6 quiet sentences that flipped the entire room, 6 revenges. The last story hits the hardest, so do not skip. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. A new revenge story drops every day. Let's go. My brother stood up at my father's will reading and pointed his finger across the table at me. "We want a DNA test on her. Today." My sister nodded beside him, arms folded, lips pressed into that cold little smile she had worn since we were kids. I was 19 years old. My father had been buried 6 days, and my own blood was staring at me like I was a thief at a table that was never mine. My mother's hands were shaking in her lap. I watched her breathe in slow, the way she used to when I was small and scared of thunder. Then she lifted her head, looked at the lawyer, and said something that made the whole room go still. "Then all 3 of them will be tested. All 3. That was your father's condition." Preston laughed, an ugly thin laugh. "Fine. Test us all. It won't change a thing." Vanessa kept smiling. She reached over and squeezed his hand, like they had already won. The lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, did not move. He just looked at my mother, then at me. Then he opened a sealed white envelope I had never seen before. "Your father left one more instruction," he said, "in case this day ever came." My mother closed her eyes. My blood ran cold. "My name is Holly Langford. I'm 19 years old. Before I dive into what happened next, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Also, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from." Alright, back to the story. I grew up in a house with 3 staircases and a father who built everything we owned from scratch. Arthur Langford started with a single delivery van when he was 22. By the time I was born, he owned 9 warehouses, a shipping line, and a name people respected from the coast to the capital. He called me his quiet one. Preston was loud. Vanessa was sharp. I was the one who sat at his feet in the study and listened to him talk about ledgers and loyalty. I was the one who learned how he signed his name, how he read contracts, how he noticed when people were lying. I never felt less loved because I was younger. If anything, my father held me a little tighter than the others. My mother used to watch us from the kitchen door with a look I did not understand back then. I understand it now. Preston was 33. Vanessa was 31. I was 12 years younger than her, which made me the afterthought, the accident, the soft child they tolerated at holidays. That was the story they told themselves. That story was about to break. My father died on a Thursday. He was sitting in his study at 6 in the morning, reading the overseas markets. My mother walked in with his coffee, and the cup was still in his hand when she found him. Heart attack. Fast. The doctor said he did not suffer. I was at college when the call came. Preston called first, and I remember his voice sounding almost normal. "Dad's gone. You should come home." No break, no tears, just a clean, flat sentence. I made the 4-hour drive with one hand on the wheel and the other pressed against my mouth. I don't remember most of it. When I got home, Vanessa was already in the house. She was wearing a black dress I had never seen before. She had been at the office that same morning, and somehow she had stopped to change. She hugged me, but her eyes were scanning the hallway behind me. "Where are the keys to Dad's office safe?" she asked. Not "how are you?" Not "I'm sorry." "Why?" I said. "We need to get the paperwork together for the lawyer." My mother walked past us. She looked like a woman who had aged 20 years in a single afternoon. She stopped, looked at me, and whispered, "Don't let them into his office yet, please." I did not understand. Not then. The funeral was held on a Monday. Half the town came. Business partners, old friends, our pastor, 3 reporters from the trade paper. My father had built something real, and people showed up to honor it. Vanessa stood at the door like she owned the place. She air-kissed mourners. She accepted condolences like they were gifts. At one point, I heard her say, "Yes, the estate is quite substantial. We'll know more by Friday." My brother Preston was worse. He stood by the food and counted heads. I watched him do it. He was counting who had come to see him, now that he was the oldest son of a dead millionaire. My mother sat alone in the front pew for most of the service. I went and sat beside her. She reached for my hand without looking at me and held it so tight my fingers went white. "Whatever happens next," she said under her breath, "promise me one thing. Do not defend yourself. Do not argue. Just let me handle it. Your father wrote instructions for a reason. I did not know what she meant. I promised anyway. On the way out of the church, Preston leaned toward me and said, very softly, so only I could hear it, "Enjoy the next week, kid. After that, things are gonna look different around here." I kept walking. My heart was pounding. Something was coming. The day after the funeral, I walked past my father's study and saw Vanessa crouched at his desk. The drawer was open. Papers were spread across the wood. "What are you doing?" I said. She did not even flinch. "Looking for the policy numbers. Don't worry about it." Mom said to leave his office alone. She stood up and turned to me. For the first time in my life, I saw her look at me with something that was not annoyance or indifference. It was colder than that. It was calculation. "Holly," she said, "let me give you a little advice. When a man like Dad dies, the money doesn't wait. And like the person who moves first wins. So go upstairs, cry if you need to cry, and let the adults handle this." I stared at her. "You're 31, I said, "not 50. And I'm not a child." She smiled. Not a warm smile. That same smile from childhood, the one that meant she was about to take something from me and make me feel stupid for wanting it back. "You're 19, she said. "You're the baby. You're the one Mom coddles. You don't know what this family actually looks like. You never have." She left the room with a stack of my father's papers under her arm. I stood in the doorway for a long time. I had no idea what she meant by that last sentence. But I would. The lawyer arrived on Friday morning. Mr. Caldwell had been my father's attorney for 28 years. He was a thin, gray man with small round glasses and a voice that never went loud. He walked into the house, nodded at my mother, and asked for the living room to be cleared. We all sat down. My mother, me, Preston and his wife, Vanessa and her husband. Mr. Caldwell placed a black leather folder on the coffee table. "Before I begin," he said, "I want to say something. Arthur was my friend. He prepared this will himself with my guidance over a period of almost 7 years. He revised it 4 times. The final version was signed and witnessed 9 months before his death. Every word was his." Preston crossed his legs. "Fine. Let's get to it." Mr. Caldwell looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Langford," he said, using Preston's full name in a way that felt oddly formal, "your father was a cautious man. He wanted this process to be calm. I strongly suggest we all listen first and ask questions after." Vanessa rolled her eyes, but she stayed quiet. My mother sat beside me and did not move. Her eyes were on the black folder. Mr. Caldwell opened it, and as his finger slid down the first page, I saw something flash across my mother's face. It was not grief, it was fear. Something in this will was about to change my life. Mr. Caldwell read the will out loud. "To my beloved wife Vivienne, I leave 40% of all assets, real and financial, without condition. To my biological children, I leave the remaining 60%, to be divided in equal shares without condition, provided each is confirmed as my biological descendant at the time of distribution." Mr. Caldwell paused. Preston leaned forward. "Say that again," he said. Mr. Caldwell read the line again. Slowly. "To my biological children, to be divided in equal shares, provided each is confirmed as my biological descendant at the time of distribution." Vanessa frowned. "What does that mean? What is the word biological doing in there?" Mr. Caldwell folded his hands. "It is a protective clause. Your father included it to prevent disputes. If a paternity question is ever raised against any named heir, a DNA panel must be completed for all 3 of you before the inheritance can be distributed." The room went so quiet that pin drop could echo like thunder. He further explained, "If no paternity question is raised against any named heir, no DNA panel will be involved, and the inheritance will be shared equally amongst 3 of you." I remember the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I remember the way my mother's knuckles went white. Preston's face changed first. I watched it happen. A slow, cruel smile spread across his mouth. "All 3, he repeated. "All 3, Mr. Caldwell said. Preston looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked back at him. Then they both looked at me. "Well," Preston said, his voice was suddenly soft, almost warm. "That's interesting." My stomach dropped. I was about to learn what they had always believed about me. "Mom," Preston said. He did not turn his head. He kept his eyes on me. "Do you have something to say about that clause?" My mother's voice was small. "It was a standard clause. Your father wrote it for peace of mind." "Peace of mind," Vanessa said. She laughed, short and dry. That is such a strange phrase, isn't it? A man puts a paternity clause in his will, and his widow calls it peace of mind. I looked at my mother. She was pale. Hallie, Preston said, finally addressing me. You know what people used to say in this town, right? After Mom came back to Dad, after she showed up at the house with a 5-year-old boy she did not want to talk about, and then you were born 8 months later. Do you know what people whispered at the club? I said nothing. They said Dad came home to clean up someone else's mess, Preston continued. They said Mom was pregnant before she ever came back. They said you were not his at all. Vanessa tilted her head and smiled at me with false sympathy. We never said anything while Dad was alive, she said. Out of respect. Out of love. But now the clause is in the will, and we have a right to know. Dad himself said so. My mother stood up from the couch. Don't do this, she said. Please. Not now. Not ever. But they already had. Sit down, Mom. This isn't about you. It is about me, my mother said. Her voice was steady now, which scared me more than the shaking. It is entirely about me. She turned to both of them. To Preston, the boy she had carried and raised. To Vanessa, the daughter she had taught to braid hair in the mirror. Listen to me, she said. Please. Your sister has done nothing to you. Nothing. She is 19 years old. She just buried her father. Whatever you are feeling about the money, whatever the lawyer just said. Please. Not like this. You are all 3 siblings. You all have the same mother. Please love each other for that alone. Vanessa stood up. She is not our sister, Mom, Vanessa said. That is the whole point. We have always known. You have always known. And now so did Dad, apparently, because why else would he put that clause in there? He put it in there to protect all 3 of you from exactly this conversation, my mother said. He trusted that none of you would ever ask for it. Preston laughed. He miscalculated. My mother took a step toward him. Her whole body was trembling. Preston, she said, if you push this, if you open this door, I am telling you right now as your mother, you will not like what comes out of it. I am begging you, please, let the will stand. Take your share, let Hallie have her share, and walk out of this house. Preston met her eyes. No, he said. The room was silent for a long time. I could hear Vanessa's husband breathing beside her. I could hear the grandfather clock. I could hear the blood in my own ears. My mother sat back down very slowly. She looked at Mr. Caldwell. Read the rest of the clause, she said. All of it. Mr. Caldwell flipped to the next page. In the event that the biological relationship of any named child is formally challenged, all 3 named children shall undergo the same genetic testing. The results, once verified by a court-approved lab, shall be binding on the distribution of the estate. Any child whose biological relationship to me is not confirmed shall be excluded from all shares of the inheritance, without appeal, without exception. He looked up. Your father signed this himself. It was notarized. It was witnessed by 2 judges and a county clerk. Preston smiled. Then let's do it, all 3, today. Today? My mother said. Today, Vanessa said. Why wait? The lab is 40 minutes away. I called them yesterday just to check the process. My mother's face changed. You called them yesterday? She whispered. Before the will was even read? Preston shrugged. We knew what was in the will in general terms. Dad hinted at it years ago. We were just preparing. There is nothing wrong with being prepared. My mother turned to me then. For the first time since the reading began, she looked at me directly. Hallie, she said, I am so sorry. Her voice broke on the word sorry. I did not know why yet. We took 2 cars to the lab. Preston drove one. Vanessa rode with him. Their spouses followed in the second car. My mother and I went alone in hers. For the first 10 minutes, she did not speak. She just drove. Both hands on the wheel. Her jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Finally, she said, whatever comes out of that lab today, I want you to remember something. Your father loved you. He loved you more than anything he ever built. You were his treasure. Mom, I said, why are you talking like this? Like something is going to happen. She did not answer right away. Something is going to happen, she said. I have been waiting 20 years for it to happen. I hoped it would not. I prayed. I did everything I could to keep the peace in that house. But your brother and sister just opened a door I have been holding shut for a very long time. I stared at her. Mom, what are you saying? She shook her head. Not now, baby. Not here. I need you to sit in that lab. I need you to give your sample. And I need you to trust me for the next 72 hours. Can you do that? My hands were cold. Yes, I said. She reached across the console and squeezed my hands so hard I almost gasped. Good girl, she said. And in that moment, I understood. My mother was afraid, but not afraid for me. What was she afraid of? The lab was clean and bright. A young woman in blue scrubs greeted us at the front desk and walked us to separate booths. She explained the process: cheek swab, sealed tube, chain of custody form. Preston went first. He was laughing the whole time. He made a joke about how the swab tickled. Vanessa rolled her eyes at him like she always did, like they were sharing a private performance. My sample took 11 seconds. I signed the form. I did not look at my mother. On the way out, Mr. Caldwell was waiting in the lobby. He had followed us. I had not noticed until that moment. The results will be ready in 72 hours, he said. Faster than standard, but your father arranged priority processing in advance. Preston frowned. In advance? What do you mean in advance? Mr. Caldwell did not blink. Your father set up the relationship with this lab 3 years ago. He had a file on hold. He said to me at the time, if the day ever comes that one of my children demands this, I want the wait to be short. I want it clean. I want it done. Preston's smile faltered for the first time that day. He set this up, he said slowly, 3 years ago. Yes. Vanessa turned to her husband. They exchanged a look I did not understand. My mother was watching all of it. Her eyes were calm now. My father had been 10 moves ahead of his own children. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Preston and Vanessa stopped speaking to my mother. They stopped speaking to me. They holed up in the east wing of the house with their spouses and held long, whispered meetings. I heard them through the walls at night, arguing about percentages, about legal options, about what they would do with their shares once the results confirmed what they already believed. I spent most of the 3 days in my father's study. I opened the drawer Vanessa had been digging through the morning after the funeral. Most of the papers were gone, but near the back, under an old ledger, I found a single white envelope with my name on the front, written in my father's handwriting. For Holly. To be opened on the day your siblings stop being your siblings. My hands shook when I read it. I held it for almost an hour before I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated 2 years before he died. My Holly, if you are reading this, then Preston and Vanessa have done what I always feared they would do. Do not be afraid. Do not hate them. They are not bad people. They are people who believe the wrong thing about you because your mother and I chose long ago never to tell them the truth. I am writing this now because I love you and because you deserve to know everything before the lawyer does. Keep reading, my quiet one. My father had left me the whole story. The letter went on for 4 handwritten pages. Your mother and I were married for 9 years before Preston was born. Those years were good. We were young and broke, and we were happy. Then the business started growing, and I was traveling more, and things between us began to change. When Preston was 2 and Vanessa was still a baby, I started to notice small things. Your mother would not meet my eyes when I came home from long trips. Her phone would ring late at night, and she would step out of the room. A neighbor of ours, a man named Julian Vance, began showing up at the house whenever I was away. I ignored it for a long time. I was a proud man. I did not want to ask the question. Then one night I asked. Your mother cried. She told me everything. She told me she had loved Julian Vance for almost 5 years. She told me she was sorry. She told me she did not know anymore who the father of our children was. I packed a bag that night. I left the house. I did not come back for 12 years. During those 12 years, your mother lived with Julian Vance. They had a child together, a boy named Theo. I heard about it the way I heard about the weather. From a distance. Then Julian Vance died in a car accident. And your mother called me. She called me on a Tuesday night. She said she was not asking me to come back. She said she only wanted to tell me that she had been wrong. About all of it. She said she still loved me, and that she always had, even when she was wrong. I did not answer her for 3 weeks. Then I drove to her house, and I sat with her at her kitchen table, and I told her that if we were going to try again, there would be a condition. I wanted a paternity test on Preston and Vanessa. She agreed. The results came back 2 weeks later. Preston was not my biological son. Vanessa was not my biological daughter. Julian Vance was the father of both of them. I remember sitting in a parking lot outside the lab for 3 hours. I remember crying harder than I had ever cried in my life. And then I remember driving to your mother's house and telling her that I did not care. That I had raised those 2 children in their first 3 years. That I loved them. That they were mine, biology or not. We got back together that month. You, my quiet one, were born 8 months later. You are my only biological child. You have always been. You are the only good thing that came out of the worst chapter of our lives, and I have loved you every single day since. Now, read the last page carefully. The last page of my father's letter was shorter. Holly, I never told your brother and sister the truth. Your mother and I agreed. They were still very little, and what good would it have done? I raised them. I loved them. I paid for their schools. I walked Vanessa down the aisle at her wedding. None of that was fake. None of that was less. But I knew, even then, that there was a chance one day they would come for you. Money does strange things to people who believe they are owed more than the rest. So 2 years ago, I sat down with Mr. Caldwell, and I made one quiet change to my will. A clause. It says that if any of my 3 children is ever accused of not being mine, then all 3 must be tested. The clause was reviewed by the state bar. It is airtight. It cannot be challenged. Because I know, Holly. I know that if that day comes, it will be because Preston and Vanessa have decided you do not belong to this family. And I wanted on that day for the truth to answer them. Not you. Not your mother. The truth. I am not doing this to punish them. I am doing this to protect you. Take what is yours. Be kind to your mother. She has carried this for a very long time. And do not answer the phone when they call to apologize. They will call. I love you more than my own life, quiet one. Dad, I folded the letter and I waited. Mr. Caldwell called the family back to the house on the morning of the 4th day. Preston arrived in a gray suit. Vanessa arrived in a cream-colored dress. Their spouses came with them. They were smiling, both of them. They thought they had won. My mother sat down beside me. She squeezed my hand under the table. Mr. Caldwell placed a large sealed envelope on the table. Before I open this, he said, I want to remind everyone of the clause you agreed to in writing 4 days ago. Whatever is in this envelope is binding. The results are court-approved. There is no appeal. There is no second test. Do you all understand? Preston nodded. Open it. Mr. Caldwell broke the seal. He removed 3 sheets of paper. He read the first one. Hallie Langford, confirmed biological daughter of Arthur Langford. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. Preston leaned forward. He did not even look at me. His eyes were on the next page. Mr. Caldwell read the second sheet. Preston Langford. No biological relationship to Arthur Langford detected. The room stopped breathing. Vanessa's smile froze in place, like it had been painted there. Mr. Caldwell read the third sheet. Vanessa Langford. No biological relationship to Arthur Langford detected. For a full 10 seconds no one spoke. Then Preston stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward. That is impossible, he said. That is a lie. My mother closed her eyes. It was the truth. Vanessa started laughing first. High and wrong. Like a glass breaking. That is a mistake, she said. This is obviously a mistake. Redo the test. Right now. I am not paying for this circus. There is no redo, Mr. Caldwell said quietly. The clause you agreed to in writing is very clear on that point. Preston pointed at my mother. You, he said. You did this. You set this up. You and Dad. Years ago. You have been planning this since we were little. My mother stood up. No, Preston, she said. I have been hiding this since you were little. There is a difference. Preston's face broke in a way I had never seen a man's face break before. Who is my father? He whispered. If not him, who? My mother's hand went to her mouth. Her whole body shook. His name was Julian Vance, she said. He was our neighbor. He is dead. He died in a car accident 22 years ago. Theo is his son too. All 3 of you, you and Vanessa and Theo, have the same biological father. Vanessa sat down hard on the couch. Her husband tried to touch her shoulder. She shoved his hand away. You lied to us our entire lives, she said. Our entire lives. I did, my mother said, and I am so sorry. I tried to tell you in my own way. I begged you not to open this door. I begged you on my knees. You let us call him Dad. He was your dad. In every way that mattered, he was your dad. Preston turned on Mr. Caldwell. We are challenging this will, he said. I want lawyers in this house by tonight. This clause is absurd. It is discriminatory. It is against every principle of inheritance law in this state. Mr. Caldwell did not move. Mr. Langford, he said, you are welcome to hire any attorney you wish. I will save you some time and money. Your father drafted this clause with a team of 3 estate attorneys over a period of 4 years. It has been reviewed by the State Bar. It has been upheld in 2 similar cases, both of which I will provide you the references for. It is a voluntary, explicit, signed consent to genetic testing. You signed it yourself in this room 4 days ago in front of witnesses and a video camera. Preston blinked. Video camera? Standard practice for high-value estate proceedings, Mr. Caldwell said. Every word of our will reading is recorded. Your father insisted on this. The recording is sealed with the state probate court. Vanessa looked up. He filmed us. Your father protected himself and his estate and his biological daughter. Preston was breathing through his teeth. So that is it, he said. We get nothing? You get exactly what the will provides for non-biological heirs, Mr. Caldwell said. Which is 0. Your father did, however, leave each of you a personal letter. I have them here. You may read them in private if you wish. Preston knocked the letters off the table. I do not want his letters, he said. I want his money. He had just said the quiet part out loud, and everyone in the room heard it. What happened over the next 10 days was almost unbelievable. Preston was a senior partner in a firm he had joined because my father had made the introductions 12 years earlier. The firm had a morality clause. When the story leaked, which it did within 48 hours, they held an emergency vote. Preston was out of a job by that Friday afternoon. Vanessa was the president of 3 charity boards in the city. All 3 asked her to step down. Quietly at first. Then not so quietly, when 2 of the boards discovered she had been drawing a private administrative salary from one of them for years. Preston's house was in my father's name, held under a family trust that specified residence was contingent on being a named heir. With Preston no longer a named heir, the trust revoked his use of the property. He had 30 days to vacate. Vanessa's car, her vacation home, her credit line at the family bank, all gone within a week. Their spouses did not take it well. Vanessa's husband filed for divorce on day 11. Preston's wife took their children and moved to her mother's house in another state. I watched all of this from the living room window of the house I had grown up in. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I just watched. My mother sat beside me most evenings, knitting. She did not talk much. Neither did I. Some nights the phone rang. It always rang after dark. I never picked up. 3 weeks after the will reading, a young man came to the front door of our house. He was 23 years old. He had our mother's eyes and a face I had only ever seen in old photographs my mother kept in a drawer in her bedroom. Theo. Until that day, I had known about him only as a footnote, a half-brother my mother never spoke of, who had been adopted out to his paternal grandparents after Julian Vance died. He had been raised in another city, by good people, with my mother knowing exactly where he was every year of his life. He just never came back. Until now. He stood on the porch and he looked at my mother and he said, I heard about Dad, Arthur. I'm sorry. And I heard about the rest of it. I'm sorry about that too. My mother started crying. She hugged him for a very long time. Theo came inside. He sat with us in the kitchen. He told us he had known he was adopted since he was 6. He had known my mother had other children. He had chosen, for his own reasons, not to reach out while Arthur was alive. He did not want to cause problems. He respected my father. He read about his businesses in the papers. I do not want anything, he said, before my mother could even ask. I just wanted to meet my sister, my real sister. He looked at me. I almost broke in half. Later that night, after Theo had gone to a hotel, my mother sat across from me at the kitchen table. I need to tell you the whole thing, she said. From my side, before anyone else does. Because I owe you the truth, and I have owed it to you for a long time. I waited. I was 22 when I married your father, she said. I loved him. I still love him. But I was young and I was lonely, and when he started working 16-hour days, I made a choice I cannot take back. Julian Vance lived 2 doors down. He was charming and he was around. And I had Preston, and then Vanessa. And I told myself they were your fathers. I told myself that because I needed them to be. And then Dad asked for the test, I said. And then your father asked for the test, she said. The second time, when he came back. I was the one who insisted he do it, because I could not keep pretending anymore. Why didn't you tell Preston and Vanessa? She closed her eyes. Because your father raised them. Because he paid for every birthday, every school, every graduation, every car. He earned the right to be their father, and I was not going to take that from him, or from them. And now they have taken it from themselves. My mother did not answer. She just reached across the table and held my hand. Preston's first call came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my father's study, going through his ledgers, learning the business the way he had taught me since I was small. My phone buzzed on the desk. Preston's name lit up the screen. I did not pick up. He called again 20 minutes later, then again an hour after that. Then he left a voicemail. I listened to it 3 days later, when I felt strong enough. Hallie? It's Preston. Look. Things got out of hand. I was angry. I was grieving. I said things I did not mean. You are my sister. You will always be my sister. That does not change because some lab in some office said something on a piece of paper. Mom lied to all of us. We are all victims here. I am not asking for everything. I am asking for a conversation. Please, please call me back. I deleted the voicemail. Vanessa called next. Her approach was different. She cried through the entire first minute of her voicemail. She said she was sorry. She said she had been cruel. She said she had always loved me. She said she did not want any money. She just wanted her sister back. I almost picked up. Then I remembered my father's last line in his letter. Do not answer the phone when they call to apologize. They will call. He had known. He had known his own children better than they knew themselves. I deleted Vanessa's message too. A year passed. I took a year off college and moved back home. My mother needed me. And honestly, I needed her. I sat with Mr. Caldwell 3 times a week for 9 months. He walked me through the business my father had built. He introduced me to the managers, the suppliers, the accountants, the lawyers. He never pushed. He never rushed. He just answered my questions one at a time, the way my father used to. The company did not shrink. The company grew. Because the people who had worked for my father for 20 years stayed. Because the reputation my father had built was stronger than one scandal. Because I was not trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just trying to do it right. By the time I turned 20, my name was on contracts my father had signed for 30 years. Preston moved to another city. He took a mid-level job at a competitor. I heard, through old friends, that he told people our family had robbed him of his birthright. People smiled at him when he said it, and walked away when he was not looking. Vanessa's divorce finalized that spring. She moved in with her mother-in-law, of all people. She started selling handbags online. She was broke and bitter and loud about it on social media. Theo came to Sunday dinners every other week. He and I were rebuilding something our mother had lost. 1 brick at a time. 2 months ago, I drove past the old family estate, the house I grew up in. The house my father built with his own hands. The house where the will was read. The house where 2 people I used to call brother and sister tried to erase me from the family for the price of a signature. I had sold the house by then. My mother did not want to live there anymore. Too many ghosts, she said. We moved into a smaller place near the water. The new owners were a young couple with 2 small girls. They were painting the shutters blue the day I drove by. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Preston. 23rd call this month. I did not pick up. At a red light, I opened the glove compartment and took out my father's letter. The paper had softened from a year of me folding it and reading it. I knew every line. I set it on the passenger seat beside me. The light turned green. I drove past the house one last time. I did not slow down. Because the thing about family, I learned, is that family is not blood. And family is not a will. And family is not a last name on an envelope. Family is who shows up. Family is who stays. Family is who tells you the truth, even when it costs them everything. My father did. And I never answered the phone. If this story touched something deep within you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from ashes, or you're still quietly piecing it back together, know this: you belong here. Subscribe, leave a like, and stay close. The next chapter is on its way. At my older sister Brianna's engagement dinner in front of 80 guests, she raised her champagne glass and turned toward me with that smile she had perfected at age 10. The smile that meant I was about to be the punchline. To my little sister Christina, she said, "The one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter. May you finally find your place in life before my wedding, so you don't embarrass the family again." My mother laughed, out loud, into her napkin. My father clinked his glass against hers. Her fiancé Connor chuckled nervously but joined in. 80 guests laughed. My cousins, my aunts, my uncles, people who had watched me grow up. I sat still for a moment. I counted my breaths. 3 in, 3 out. Then I stood up slowly and picked up my glass of water. To my big sister Brianna, I said. My voice was calm. The desperate one who booked her engagement dinner in a restaurant she did not know belonged to me. The laughter stopped. Forks paused midair. My mother's smile collapsed like a dropped cake. My father turned to me with a look I had never seen on his face before. And my sister, still holding her glass in the air, whispered, "What did you just say?" I smiled. "You heard me," I said. "Every word." My name is Christina Whitmore. I'm 23 years old. Before we jump into what happens next, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now let's get back to the story. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house on a quiet street where my parents' biggest fear was always what the neighbors would think. My father sold insurance. My mother taught piano lessons 3 days a week. We were comfortable. Not rich, not poor. Just a middle-class family with one golden daughter and one invisible one. The golden one was Brianna. The invisible one was me. Brianna was 3 years older. Taller, prettier, according to my mother. Sharper, according to my father. She had her own birthday parties with every girl from her class. I had mine postponed or combined with hers. When she got into college, we threw a party. When I got into college on a full academic scholarship, my mother said, "That is wonderful, sweetheart. Make sure you remember who paid for your books." Nobody had paid for my books. I had paid for my own books. But I had learned a long time ago that in the Whitmore house, the truth was whatever Brianna felt like on a given day. That was my whole life. Until my grandparents stepped in. My grandfather's name was Alastair Whitmore. He was my father's father. He founded a hospitality company 40 years ago with one small restaurant and a rented espresso machine. By the time I was born, the Whitmore Hospitality Group owned 12 restaurants, 2 hotels, and a wedding venue on the edge of town. My grandmother, Evelyn, had run the books from their kitchen table for 38 of those years. My father hated working for them. He had refused to join the business. He had gone into insurance instead, because he wanted to build something of his own. My grandparents had been hurt. They had also been polite about it. They had written him a check for the house every Christmas, and my mother had cashed it every year without calling to say thank you. Brianna hated them. She said they smelled like old books and spoke too slowly and made her sit through boring dinners. I loved them. From the time I could walk, I spent every weekend at their place. My grandmother taught me chess. My grandfather walked me through the kitchens of his restaurants when they were closed, teaching about margins, costs, staff, and heart. A business is not numbers, quiet one, he used to say. A business is promises. Every menu is a promise. Every chair is a promise. He called me quiet one because I listened more than I spoke. He said that was rare. My parents noticed how much time I spent with my grandparents. They did not like it. "You're turning her into a stuck-up little thing," my mother said once, loud enough for my grandmother to hear, at a Christmas dinner when I was 11. "Filling her head with restaurants and business. She's a child. Let her be a child." My grandmother had set down her fork very quietly and said, "Gwendolyn, she is the brightest person at this table. I will feed her mind until she can feed her own." My mother never forgave her for that sentence. After that Christmas, my parents began to poison the relationship in small ways. They stopped driving me to the weekend visits. They scheduled birthday parties and dentist appointments on the days I was supposed to go. They told me stories at night in soft tea voices, that my grandparents were favoring me because they were trying to turn me against the rest of the family. I did not believe it. Brianna did. She turned on our grandmas completely by the time she was 15. She called them old, cheap, embarrassing. She told her friends at school that we were rich because our grandparents were rich and she would inherit everything one day. My grandparents heard about that last one. Somehow, they always heard things. My grandmother took me aside at their house one Saturday afternoon. I was 14. "Christina," she said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully." My grandmother sat me down in their sunroom and held both of my hands. "Your grandfather and I love all of you," she said. "But we are not fools. We see the way your mother treats you. We see the way your sister talks about us. We know what your father chose when he walked away from this family business. We know what all of that means." I did not say anything. "When the time comes," she said, "we are going to leave the Whitmore Hospitality Group to you. All of it. Not because the others do not matter, but because only one person in this family understands what it means to us. And that person is you." I started to shake my head. "No," I said. "Give it to Dad, or split it, or give it to charity. I don't want to be the reason everyone hates me more." My grandmother smiled. "Quiet one," she said. "I need you to learn something now while you are young. Money does not create the hate. Money reveals the hate. It has always been there. It will always be there. What you do with the truth is what matters." My grandfather walked in then. He sat down across from me. He placed a small blue envelope on the coffee table. "In here," he said, "is a letter. Do not open it until after we are gone. And when you open it, do what it says. Exactly. No one else is to know." I nodded. My grandfather died when I was 16. He had a stroke in the kitchen of his very first restaurant, the one he had opened 40 years earlier with that rented espresso machine. He was testing a new soup. The staff said he smiled, said the broth needed more salt, and then sat down in the chair by the window. He did not get back up. My grandmother died 11 months later. The doctor said it was heart failure. My mother said it was a broken heart. For once, my mother was right. Both funerals were packed. Restaurant managers, hotel staff, city officials, people who had worked for my grandparents for 20-30 years, people who cried openly. My mother used both funerals as opportunities to ask loudly and often when the will would be read. At my grandmother's reception, my father cornered me by the coffee table. "Listen, sweetheart," he said. "When the lawyer calls, you and I need to sit down together, as a family, so that we can make sure everything is shared fairly. You are the youngest. You would not know how any of that works. I have handled these things before." He had not handled anything like this before. "Okay, Dad," I said. I lied to my father for the first time that afternoon. I had already read the blue envelope, and I knew, word for word, what my grandparents wanted me to do. The letter in the blue envelope was 2 pages long. It was written in my grandmother's handwriting, my quiet one. "If you're reading this, your grandfather and I have both gone home. Do not be sad for long. We lived the way we wanted. We loved each other. We loved you. That is a full life. Now listen carefully. We have revised our will 4 times in the last 3 years. The final version is with our attorney, Mr. Julian Oakes. His number is on the back of this letter. He is expecting your call. We have left everything to you. The restaurants, the hotels, the venue, the land, the holdings, all of it. We have left you one other thing. Your parents' house, the one you live in. Your grandfather bought it as a gift for your father when he got married, and he never changed the deed. Your parents have always believed it was theirs. It has always been ours, and now it is yours. Here is what we ask of you. Do not tell anyone. Not your parents, not your sister, not your friends, not yet. You are 16. On your 18th birthday, call Mr. Oakes. Transfer everything into a trust in your name. Let the trust run quietly for as long as you need it to. One day, someone in your family will mistake your silence for weakness. That is the day you speak. We love you, quiet one. I did not say a word to my parents about the will. When the letter from Mr. Oakes arrived 2 weeks later, I intercepted the mail. When the lawyer called our house, I answered it first. When my father asked about the estate, I told him Mr. Oakes said we would hear more in a few months. A few months? My father said. That is ridiculous. Your grandmother's estate should have been clean. Simple. I know, Dad, I said. I don't understand it either. I was 16. I was learning how to lie. It came more easily than I wanted it to. When my 18th birthday came, I drove myself to Mr. Oakes's office on the afternoon of the party my parents had not thrown for me. Mr. Oakes was about 50. He had been my grandfather's attorney for 28 years. He poured me a cup of tea, and then he slid a stack of paperwork across the mahogany desk. Your grandparents chose you, he said, because they believed you could do this. Do you still want to do this? I looked at the papers. 12 restaurants, 2 hotels, a wedding venue called the Rosewood Estate, $40 million of real estate holdings, a brokerage account worth another $11 million. Yes, I said. Sign here. I signed. Then I signed 30 more times. When I left his office, I owned a business empire. I drove home and heated up a frozen pizza and told my mother I had been at the library. For the next 5 years, I lived 2 lives. In the house on Linden Crescent, I was still the invisible daughter. I paid my own way through college. I worked part-time at a bookshop because it kept my parents from asking questions. I drove an old car. I wore clothes from the clearance rack. I rode the bus. My parents called me their broke little dreamer. My sister called me the charity case. My family mocked me at every holiday. I said nothing. In the other life, I met with Mr. Oakes once a week. I learned the business. I learned the books. I met every restaurant manager quietly, one at a time, always introduced as Alistair's granddaughter who is shadowing us this year. None of them knew I owned the company. Only Mr. Oakes and the company's chief operating officer, a woman named Maricela Vega, knew the truth. Maricela was my grandfather's hand-picked second in command. She had been running the daily operations for 11 years. When my grandfather died, she had stepped up without asking for more. When I signed the papers on my 18th birthday, she had flown across the country to meet me in Mr. Oakes's office and shake my hand. Your grandfather told me to wait for you, she had said. I've been waiting. I'll keep waiting until you're ready. By the time I was 23, I was ready. And that was the year Brianna announced her engagement. Brianna called a family meeting on a Sunday afternoon. I thought someone had died. She had not called a family meeting in her entire life. When I walked into my parents' living room, she was already sitting on the couch with Connor Ashford, her boyfriend of 18 months. Her left hand was extended across the armrest. A diamond the size of a small grape caught the afternoon light. My mother was already crying. My father was already pouring champagne. We're engaged, Brianna said before I had even sat down. My mother screamed with joy. My father hugged Connor. I stood in the doorway and smiled and said the correct words. Congratulations, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Brianna looked up at me. We haven't picked a date yet, she said, but we want it to be special, really special. Connor's family has a lot of expectations. We want to do it right. Connor came from old money. His parents owned a shipping firm 3 generations deep. His mother had already been profiled in 2 society magazines. Whatever you need, my mother said. Whatever you need. Your father and I will make it happen. Brianna smiled. Then she looked at me. Christina, she said, I'd like you to be a bridesmaid, not maid of honor, obviously, but a bridesmaid, if you can afford the dress. My mother laughed. My father chuckled. I smiled. Of course. The wedding planning began the next week. I was not invited to any of it. Brianna and my mother went to bridal boutiques together. They toured venues together. They called Connor's mother, Mrs. Ashford, to coordinate colors and themes. They posted photos on social media of themselves laughing with champagne flutes under chandeliers. I found out about most of these outings from their posts. When I finally asked Brianna at a Sunday dinner where they had decided to hold the ceremony, she rolled her eyes. Christina, you really don't need to worry about the details. It's our wedding. Just show up and do your part. I'd like to know where the venue is, I said, so I can plan my schedule. My mother sighed. She's so uptight about everything. Fine, it's at the Rosewood Estate. Is that good enough? I nearly dropped my fork. The Rosewood Estate. My grandfather's crown jewel. My wedding venue. I kept my face flat. Oh, I said, that sounds beautiful. It's extremely expensive, my father said, pouring himself more wine. Connor's family is paying for most of it. We're covering some of the smaller costs. Everyone is pitching in what they can. We actually wanted to talk to you about that." "About what?" "Your contribution," my mother said. I set down my fork. "My contribution?" "30,000, Brianna said without looking up from her phone. "Everyone is doing their part." $30,000, I repeated. "For the flowers," my mother said, as if that explained anything. "And the photographer, and a few other things. Connor's family is covering the venue and the dinner. We are covering the dress and the rehearsal. You will cover the rest." "I don't have $30,000, I said. My father laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Sweetheart," he said, "you are 23 years old. You have had a steady little job. You have been living here for free. You have had no real expenses. You must have saved something." "I have savings for my future," I said. "For an apartment, for school." My sister looked up from her phone for the first time. "Christina," she said, "this is my wedding. This is the most important day of my life, and you are seriously trying to tell me you cannot help your family with one single expense?" I said, "I don't have $30,000. "Then get a loan," my mother said, "or sell something, or figure it out. That is what adults do, Christina. That is what responsible people do. Your sister has worked so hard for this moment. The least you can do as her sister is show up." I looked around the table. At the three faces I had known my entire life, the three faces that had laughed at me, excluded me, and called me broke for 23 years. They genuinely believed I would pay. "I'll try," I said softly. "Good girl," my father said. I called Maricela Vega the next morning. We met at a coffee shop 3 towns over, where we always met. She was 51, silver-haired, with the kind of calm that only came from running 12 restaurants without ever raising her voice. I told her everything. The engagement, the venue, the 30,000, the toast pattern, the years of mockery. Maricela listened the way she always listened, hands folded, eyes steady. When I finished, she said, "Christina, your grandfather left you a question in that blue envelope. Do you remember it?" "Someone will one day mistake my silence for weakness," I said. "That is the day I speak." "Yes. Is that day now?" Maricela tilted her head. "I cannot make that decision for you. But I can tell you this. Your sister booked the Rosewood estate 6 weeks ago without knowing who owns it. She is now planning her engagement dinner at one of our restaurants, the Ember Room, next Saturday. Also without knowing. And your father has been complaining for 12 years that your grandfather never left him anything. He lives in a house he does not own." I looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying, your family is walking into a room you built. The only question is whether you turn on the lights." I stirred my coffee for a long moment. "Turn them on," I said. The engagement dinner was booked for Saturday evening at the Ember Room. 80 guests, 5-course tasting menu, open bar, private dining wing. The bill was $22,000. Connor's family had paid the deposit. My parents had promised to cover the rest. What they did not know was that the general manager of the Ember Room, a man named Xavier Delacroix, had worked for my grandfather for 18 years. He had run that restaurant since before I was born. He was one of maybe 11 people in the entire company who knew my name. I called Xavier on Thursday. "The party on Saturday night," I said. "The Whitmore engagement. I will be there." "Miss Whitmore," he said, "of course." "Xavier, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always." "Has my father ever come into the restaurant?" "Many times, miss. Always as a guest of someone else. He has brought clients. He has brought your mother. He has brought your sister. He has always name-dropped your grandfather to get upgrades. Has he ever paid full price?" Xavier hesitated. "No, miss. Your grandfather left a standing instruction. Family gets 30% off. Your father always uses it. I have personally waived over $60,000 for him over the years." I closed my eyes. "Xavier," I said, "the standing instruction ends on Saturday night, effective immediately, and I will be at that dinner. I want you to treat me like any other guest, until I stand up. And then? Then you do your job." I arrived at the Ember Room on Saturday at 6:45. I wore a plain black dress, nothing expensive, nothing designer, just the kind of dress a broke little sister would wear to an event where she was barely wanted. My mother spotted me from across the room and sighed. "Christina, really? For your sister's engagement?" "It's clean," I said. "Barely," she said. My father had already been drinking. He clapped me on the shoulder. There she is, the bookshop girl. Did you bring the check? What check, Dad? The 30,000. Your mother said you promised. I smiled. We can talk about it later, Dad. He laughed and walked away. Brianna was holding court in the center of the room. Connor was beside her. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, stood stiffly with champagne flutes. They had a faint air of people who had already decided our family was below them. Brianna had not noticed yet. I took my seat near the end of the long table, almost at the children's side. My mother had placed me there on purpose. Throughout the first 2 courses, Brianna toasted herself 3 times. Each time, my parents raised their glasses and cheered. By the 3rd course, she was ready for her signature moment. She tapped her glass with a dessert fork and stood. The room hushed. She smiled her cruel smile. Then she turned it on me. I want to take a moment, Brianna said, lifting her glass, to thank the family members who have shown up for me tonight, especially the ones who made the effort, which brings me to my dear little sister, Christina. My mother giggled into her napkin. My father was already chuckling. To my little sister, Christina, Brianna said, the one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter. May you finally find your place in life before my wedding so you don't embarrass the family again. The laughter rolled across the room. Mrs. Ashford did not laugh. I noticed that. Neither did Connor. I stood up slowly. I picked up my glass of water. I did not rush. The laughter died down as people noticed I was standing. To my big sister Brianna, I said. My voice was soft. Every syllable was clean. The desperate one who booked her engagement dinner in a restaurant she did not know belonged to me. The laughter stopped. For 3 seconds, no one said anything. Then Brianna laughed. A single, sharp, confused laugh. What are you talking about? She said. I turned my head slightly. At the edge of the room, Xavier Delacroix stepped forward. He walked calmly to my side. He placed his hand on the back of my chair. Miss Whitmore, he said, loud enough for the nearest 10 tables to hear. Is there a problem with the service this evening? My mother's face began to crack. My father set down his glass. Brianna stared. No problem, Xavier, I said. Everything is excellent. Connor's mother, Mrs. Ashford, was the first to speak. I'm sorry, she said slowly. Christina, did the manager just call you Miss Whitmore as if you own this restaurant? I turned to her. I own this restaurant, Mrs. Ashford, and the 11 others in the Whitmore Hospitality Group, and the 2 hotels on the north side of the city, and the Rosewood Estate, where my sister has booked her wedding. Silence. Real silence. The kind you can hear the ice melting in. Brianna stood frozen with her champagne flute still raised halfway. Her smile had died somewhere around the word hotels. My mother made a small, strangled sound, like a kettle about to scream. That is not true, my father said finally. His voice was low, dangerous. Christina, sit down. You are embarrassing yourself. Dad, I said, I have been preparing this answer for 5 years. Enough, my mother hissed. Enough, sit down. I turned to Mrs. Ashford. I apologize that this moment had to happen at your son's engagement dinner. Seth, my grandparents raised me to behave better than this. My family, unfortunately, did not. Mrs. Ashford was watching me with an expression I could not quite read. It was not sympathy. It was recalculation. She was a woman who ran a shipping firm. She knew the sound of a reveal. Connor turned to Brianna. You booked this dinner here, he said, because you said it would look good for us in front of my parents. You told them we had family connections here. Did you know? Brianna did not answer. I did not know, Brianna finally whispered. How would I know? That is exactly the point, I said. My father stood up. Christina, whatever game you are playing, this ends now. You are making up a story. You have always been a dreamer. Your grandfather was a nice old man who ran some restaurants, but everyone knows he sold the business years before he died. Xavier cleared his throat. I'm sorry to interject, he said. But Mr. That Whitmore III never sold the business. I worked for him personally for 18 years. The Whitmore Hospitality Group has been privately held since its founding. Ownership transferred upon his passing, according to his will, to his granddaughter, Miss Christina Whitmore. That transfer was finalized when Miss Whitmore turned 18, 5 years ago. My father went pale. You are lying, my mother said. I can provide documentation, Xavier said. It is a matter of corporate record, and I do not lie, Mrs. Whitmore, in my own dining room. Connor's mother turned to her husband. They shared a look. The kind of look married couples share when they are rapidly updating their opinion of someone. "Christina, dear," Mrs. Ashford said, "I believe you. Please continue." "There isn't much more," I said. "I just wanted everyone here to know that the toast my sister made a minute ago was made in a restaurant I own, at a table I comped, because I did not want anyone stuck with the bill, on a night when my family demanded I contribute $30,000 to a wedding at a venue that also belongs to me." Connor set down his glass. He did not pick it back up. The engagement dinner did not recover. Guests ate quietly. Then many of them made polite excuses and left. Connor's parents left within 15 minutes. Mrs. Ashford stopped by my seat on her way out. "Miss Whitmore," she said quietly, "my husband would very much like to have coffee with you next week. He has a number of interests in hospitality himself. Would that be possible?" "Of course," I said. She smiled. The first warm smile I had gotten all evening. Then she left. Connor lingered. He did not sit back down next to Brianna. He stood awkwardly in the aisle between tables. "Christina," he said finally, "I had no idea." "I believe you," I said. "Brianna kept saying your grandparents left everyone a little something, that the real money was her dad's side, that you were struggling." "She lied, Connor." He looked at Brianna, who was crying silently at the end of the table. "I need some air," he said. He walked out. Brianna tried to follow him. My mother stopped her. They began hissing at each other. My father dropped into his chair and stared at the tablecloth. I finished my water. I stood up. I walked over to Xavier. "Comp the table," I said. "Everything. The Ashfords paid the deposit. Refund them in the morning." "Yes, Miss Whitmore." "And Xavier?" "Yes." "Thank you. Grandpa was right about you." I walked out of my own restaurant. The first call came at 2:14 in the morning. It was my mother. "Christina, I do not know what you have been told. I do not know who has poisoned you against this family. But we are going to talk. Tomorrow. As a family. And we are going to straighten this out. Your grandmother was a manipulative woman, and whatever she led you to believe about any of this is not real. Call me." I did not call. The second call came at 3 in the morning. My father. "Christina, I am your father. I have been your father for 23 years. Do you hear me? I fed you. I put a roof over your head. I do not care what piece of paper some lawyer has in some office. This family stays together. I will not be cut out of my own father's business by a teenage prank. Call me." I did not call. The third call came at 5 in the morning. Brianna. She did not speak for the first 30 seconds. I could only hear her crying. Then she said, "Connor ended the engagement. Just now. He said his parents are embarrassed. He said I lied to him from the start. He said he cannot trust me. Christina, please, please call him. Please tell him it was a misunderstanding. I will do anything. I will apologize in front of the whole family. Just please." I listened to the voicemail twice. I deleted it. On Monday morning, I drove to my parents' house, or rather, to my house. It was the first time I had ever walked through that front door knowing, fully and out loud, that the title was in my name. My mother opened the door. Her hair was not done. Her eyes were red. My father was behind her, already holding a glass of something. Come in, my mother said, suddenly warm. "Sit down. Let us talk like adults." I did not sit down. I stood in the foyer. Mr. Julian Oakes was in his car outside. He had come with me. "I'm not staying," I said. "I came to give you this." I handed my mother a sealed envelope. She opened it. I watched her read. Her face did 3 things in the space of 10 seconds. It went white. Then it went red. Then it went still, the way a bowl of water goes still right before it freezes. "This is a lie," she whispered. "It is not." "Harold," she said. "Harold, read this." My father took the paper. He read it once, he read it again. "This house," he said, "is in your name. It has always been in my name. Grandpa bought it for you as a wedding gift, but he never changed the deed. It went to me with the rest of the estate." "You are lying." "I am not lying, Dad. Mr. Oakes is outside. He has the original purchase documents from 1979. My mother sat down on the bench by the door. "What do you want?" my father said. He did not ask it bitterly. He asked it like a man negotiating with his own child for shelter. "Dad," I said, "I am not throwing you out. I am not that person. I promised Grandma I would not be that person." My mother looked up hopefully. "But," I said, "there are going to be changes, effective immediately." What changes? My father said. I opened my own folder. 1. You will begin paying rent on this house, $2,200 per month. That is below the market rate. Mr. Oakes has already drafted the lease. If you cannot pay, we will help you downsize. Rent, my father said flatly. Rent on my own house. It is not your house, Dad. It has never been your house. 2. I continued. The family discount you have been using at Whitmore restaurants is revoked, effective last Saturday. My mother made a small sound. 3. The $30,000 you demanded for the wedding is no longer required. The wedding venue will honor the booking at the contracted rate, but payment is now between Brianna and Connor's family. I will not be attending. You can't do this, my mother whispered. You can't. Mom, I said gently, I am not doing anything. I am just no longer paying the bill for how this family treats me. I turned to leave. Christina, wait, my father called. I did not wait. Brianna came to see me 3 days later, not at my parents' house. She came to my office. The real one, in the tower downtown. She had called ahead for the first time in her life. Maricela had put her on the calendar for 15 minutes. When she walked in, she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Connor really called it off, she said, before she even sat down. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? I thought about it. I am sorry he got hurt. I am not sorry the truth came out. She sat down slowly. She looked around at the office, the wall of awards behind me, the view over the river, the nameplate on the desk. How long have you been doing all of this? 5 years. And you never told me. You never asked, Brianna. Not once. Not in 5 years. You assumed. Everyone assumed. You all decided I was the broke one, and you never checked. She started to cry. I'm sorry, she said. I am so sorry. I let her cry. After a long time, she said, Is there any way to fix this? Between you and me? Yes, I took a breath. Maybe, but not this year. Maybe not next year. I need to see you become a person who does not mock people who cannot fight back. When I see that person, we can talk. She nodded. She wiped her eyes. She left. I did not cry after she did. Over the following 6 months, my life became busier and quieter at the same time. I officially stepped into the public chairman seat of the Whitmore Hospitality Group. Maricela ran operations. I ran strategy. Mr. Oakes handled the legal. We opened 2 new restaurants in a neighboring state. I partnered with Mr. Ashford, Connor's father, on a hospitality venture that was genuinely exciting. He became unexpectedly a friend. He said his wife adored me. My parents moved out of the house on Linden Crescent 6 weeks after our conversation. My father could not swallow paying rent to his own daughter. He and my mother bought a small condo on the other side of town. My father took early retirement. My mother stopped teaching piano. Neither of them has invited me to dinner since. I sold the house on Linden Crescent for $620,000. I put the money into a scholarship fund in my grandparents' names. The Alastair and Evelyn Whitmore Scholarship. It gives 5 full rides a year to first-generation college St. Eudens who love hospitality. Brianna called once a month at first, then every other month. She took a job at a coffee shop. She lived in a small apartment by herself. She and Connor never got back together. She kept calling, and I kept picking up, slowly, briefly, one short conversation at a time. She was trying. For the first time in her life, she was trying. I did not owe her the reconciliation, but I was willing to watch her earn it. Almost a year after the engagement dinner, on a quiet Thursday evening, I drove past the Ember Room on my way home from the office. The sign still glowed warm and amber over the front door, my grandfather's sign. I slowed the car. I looked at it for a long time. I thought about the 16-year-old girl my grandmother had sat down in her sunroom and trusted with an entire empire. I thought about my grandfather handing me that blue envelope and telling me to wait. I thought about every Christmas I had sat quietly while my sister was celebrated, every birthday party I had skipped, every loan my father had demanded, every sigh my mother had made when I walked into a room. I thought about Brianna raising her glass that Saturday night and how my parents had laughed, and I thought about my own voice answering her. Soft, clean, unshakable. The phone buzzed on the passenger seat. My father, his 29th call since the dinner. I did not pick up. Here's what I have learned, watching my family fall apart because they pushed the one person they thought they could keep pushing. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a receipt. Silence is every moment you swallowed, every laugh you pretended to smile through, every insult you filed away, carefully, in a drawer no one else knew existed. And one day, when someone mistakes that silence for permission, you open the drawer, you read the receipt, and you hand them the bill. If this story spoke to you, add your voice in the comments. Whether you've risen from ashes or are still rebuilding, you're part of this family now. Subscribe, like, and stay close. The next story is coming. My office door opened at 9:42 on a Tuesday morning, and my little sister walked in with 2 state detectives and an arrest warrant with my name on it. She did not say hello. She did not say my name. She placed a manila envelope on my desk, straightened her navy blazer, and said, "Margaret Ashford, you are under arrest for 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of arson in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent." I had raised her since she was 10 years old. I had worked triple shifts at a diner for 7 years so she could buy graphing calculators and prom dresses. I had driven 600 miles through a snowstorm to move her into her freshman dorm at Harvard. I had sat in the back row of her swearing-in ceremony 6 weeks earlier, watching her raise her right hand, crying so hard a stranger handed me her own tissues. She was 25 years old now, the youngest assistant district attorney ever appointed in our state, and the charge she had just read off the warrant was for killing our parents in the house fire of 2009. My parents had died at 3:15 in the morning on a Thursday in March. I was 17. I was sleeping at a friend's house 2 miles away. I had not set the fire. I had never set a fire in my life. I became a certified fire investigator so I could prove it. My name is Margaret Ashford. I'm 32 years old, and I'm an IAAI certified fire investigator for a regional insurance carrier in the Midwest. Before I dive into what happened next, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Also, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Alright, back to the story. For 15 years, I have investigated house fires for a living. I have stood in the wet char of hundreds of homes, breathing the ash of other people's lives. I have cleared 46 homeowners who were falsely accused of burning down their own houses. I have testified in 19 trials. I have sent 6 arsonists to prison. Every case I took for the same reason. Somewhere in a dusty brown file labeled Ashford, 14th March 2009, was the case I could never officially touch. The case of my own parents. The case my uncle made sure got closed as undetermined. The case my uncle spent 15 years slowly, patiently, convincing my little sister I was responsible for. I never thought he would get her to cuff me. I never thought she would be the one holding the warrant. But on that Tuesday morning, with a badge clipped to her belt and not a single tremor in her voice, my sister Evelyn looked me in the face and read me my rights. I understood then that the fire had finally caught up to both of us. My parents were not perfect people, but they were good people. My father, Caleb Ashford, ran a small, independent hardware store in our town. My mother, Marisol, taught 2nd grade at the elementary school across the street. They had been high school sweethearts. They had 2 girls, 7 years apart, and a mortgage that was 2 years away from paid off. On the night of March 13th, 2009, I was sleeping at my best friend Priya's house. We had a chemistry midterm the next morning. Ever, who was 10, was home in her bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway. At 12:41 in the morning, my mother called my cell phone. I did not answer. I was asleep. She left a voicemail that was 47 seconds long. On the voicemail, she sounded frightened. She said, "Margaret, honey, if you wake up in the night, please call me. Your Uncle Desmond showed up at the house tonight. He is saying things. He is asking about Grandma's will again. Dad asked him to leave twice. I don't love this. Call me when you wake. I love you, baby." At 3:15 in the morning, a neighbor across the street named Mrs. Houston heard glass break. She looked out her window and saw flames at the back of our house. She called 911. By the time the fire trucks arrived, 11 minutes later, the upstairs was gone. My parents were gone. Priya's mother woke me up at 6:45 in the morning with her hand on my shoulder and a look on her face I will never forget. She said there had been an accident at my house. She said my sister was safe. She did not say my parents were safe. She drove me there in her minivan. I was still wearing Priya's borrowed sweatpants. The house was not a house anymore. It was a black shape with the roof caved in and the chimney standing alone like a gravestone. 2 fire trucks were still there. Yellow tape stretched across what used to be our driveway. A deputy named Officer Anderson walked me over to his squad car and made me sit down in the back seat with the door open. He was a gentleman. He had coached my 7th grade softball team. He told me my mother and father had not made it out. He told me Ever had been carried out through her bedroom window by a firefighter named Harlan Beck. He told me Ever was at the Houston's house across the street, wrapped in a blanket, sitting in their kitchen with a glass of juice she was not drinking. I ran to that kitchen. Ever was 10. She was still in her unicorn pajamas. She did not cry when she saw me. She stood up, walked across the kitchen and climbed into my lap, and she did not speak for the next 4 days. Uncle Desmond was my father's younger brother. He was 39 at the time. He had failed out of 2 community colleges, wrecked 3 marriages, and was running a small construction contracting business out of a trailer on the edge of town. The business had been 3 months behind on payroll that winter. My father had loaned him $8,000 in January. Dad had told Mom at the kitchen table one Sunday that it was the last time. 3 days after the fire, Uncle Desmond showed up at the Houston's house with a social worker and a handshake and a plan. He told the social worker he would take us in. He told the court he would be our legal guardian until I turned 18. He told my mother's sister, my Aunt Saffron, who lived in Oregon and wanted to take us, that the girls needed to stay in the home state for school. He said the words, what Caleb would have wanted 6 times in one meeting. He moved us into his 2-bedroom ranch on the west edge of town. Ever got the smaller bedroom. I got the pull-out couch in the living room. The next week, the insurance check for the house came through. $840,000. Desmond deposited it into a trust he was supposed to manage for us. Within 90 days, Desmond had bought a new truck, paid off his construction company's debts, and started quietly funneling the rest into personal accounts. Mrs. Houston came to Desmond's house 6 weeks after the fire. She brought a casserole. She waited until I walked her out to her car before she said what she had come to say. She said, Margaret, sweetheart, I don't want to stir anything up, but I saw Desmond's truck parked 2 streets over at 2 a.m. that night. The red Silverado with the dent in the tailgate. I know his truck. I've seen it at your parents' house 100 times. She put her hand on my arm. She said, I already told the fire marshal. I don't know what they're going to do with it. But I wanted you to know I told them. I went back inside and asked Desmond where he had been the night of the fire. He said he had been home. I asked him why Mrs. Houston had seen his truck 2 streets from our house at 2 a.m. His face went very still. Then he laughed once and said Mrs. Houston was 69 years old and could not see well at night, and the Silverado had been parked in his driveway the whole night. I walked out to his driveway. The Silverado was not there. He said he had lent it to a friend that afternoon. I was 17. I did not know what to do with the information. I wrote it down in a spiral notebook I kept under the pull-out couch. I kept the notebook. The state-appointed lawyer for the trust told me I had no right to see account statements until I turned 21. Desmond, as legal guardian, controlled everything. He gave us $35 a week for groceries. He told me I was going to need to work if I wanted anything beyond that. I got my first job 8 days after my 17th birthday at a 24-hour pancake house off Route 9. I worked Friday and Saturday overnights, 6 at night to 6 in the morning, for $4.20 an hour plus tips. I slept during the day. I went to school on Monday through Thursday. I graduated 6th in my class. I did not go to prom. I did not go to a 4-year college. I took fire science courses at the community college at night, and by 20, I was working as an entry-level fire investigator for a small insurance outfit. I studied for every certification they had. I passed everyone. Every dollar that was not rent and groceries went into a sock drawer I kept under my mattress. I labeled it Ever. It was for my little sister's future. I promised my dead mother, on a park bench the summer after the fire, that Ever would go to college. Ever would not work 3 jobs, ever would not sleep on a pull-out couch, ever would not grow up the way I was growing up. I kept that promise. I kept it even when it cost me everything else. Ever was the smartest child I have ever known. She read Little Women at 8. She won the regional spelling bee at 10, 4 months after the fire, standing on a stage in a dress I had sewn myself from a thrift store tablecloth. She skipped 7th grade. She skipped 10th grade. She was on the honor roll every single semester from 6th through 12th. She stayed up with me on Saturday nights at the pancake house sometimes, doing homework at the corner booth while I refilled coffees for truckers and long-haul drivers. The owner, a wide-shouldered woman named Bev, let Ever sit there for free as long as she did not bother anyone. Ever never bothered anyone. Ever was quiet. Ever was watching. When Ever was 15, she asked me one night out of nowhere if I had set the fire. She asked it the way a child asks whether Santa Claus is real. Not accusing. Just checking. I put down the pot of coffee I was carrying. I sat across from her in the booth. I said, "No. I did not. I would never have hurt Mom and Dad. I would never have hurt you. Who told you that?" She said, "Uncle Desmond. He said he never wanted to say it out loud. But he said sometimes he worries." I told her Uncle Desmond was wrong. She nodded. She went back to her homework. I did not know that night that he had been planting the seed since she was 10. Ever took the SAT at 15 and scored a 1570. She took it again at 16 and scored a 1590. At 17, she applied to every Ivy League school. She wrote her personal essay about losing her parents in a house fire and being raised by a big sister who waited tables. She did not tell me she had written the essay until after she submitted it. She got into 7 of the 8. Harvard offered her a full ride plus a leadership stipend. Stanford offered her a full ride plus a name scholarship. She chose Harvard because it was closer. She said 3 states away was closer than 6. I cried in the pancake house bathroom for 20 minutes the day she told me. Bev came in and sat on the floor with me and handed me paper towels. At her high school graduation, Uncle Desmond stood up during the reception and gave a speech. He said he had taken in 2 orphan girls when no one else would. He said it had not been easy, but love had found a way. He said he was proudest in all his life of this one particular moment. He did not mention me by name once. Ever hugged him on the stage. She hugged me afterward, behind the school where the parents could not see. She whispered in my ear, "I know who really raised me. I love you." I thought that would be enough. It was not enough. Ever was 19, in her 2nd year at Harvard, when the phone calls from Uncle Desmond started to matter. She would call me on Sundays, and then every other Sunday, and then once a month. Her voice got a little more careful each time. She started using phrases I had never heard her say. She said, "Uncle Desmond mentioned." She said, "Uncle Desmond thinks." She said, "I wonder if Mom's life insurance was ever really." In her 3rd year, she did a summer internship in Washington. She did not come home for Christmas. She said it was her course load. Desmond flew out to visit her twice that year. I never flew out. I could not afford it, and she never offered. She graduated summa cum laude. I went to the ceremony. I sat in the bleachers by myself. Desmond sat with Ever in the family section. Aunt Saffron flew in from Oregon and sat next to me and held my hand through the whole thing. She whispered, "He is doing something to her. I can feel it." She got into Yale Law on a full ride. She moved to New Haven. She called me less. She called Desmond more. She came home once, the summer before her 2nd year, for a long weekend. She slept in the guest room of the small 1-bedroom I had bought by then. She was polite. She was distant. She left a day early. I did not understand yet what she was reading on his couch during those visits. She clerked for a federal appeals judge straight out of Yale Law. She moved back home to take a position as an assistant district attorney at 25. Everybody in town wrote news articles about the local girl made good. The paper ran a photo of her in front of the courthouse with a caption that said, "Ashford returns home." The swearing-in ceremony was on a Friday afternoon in February. The courtroom was full. Uncle Desmond sat in the front row, in a navy suit I had never seen him wear. Aunt Saffron could not fly out. I drove 3 hours from a fire scene in another county to make it. I sat in the back row in my work clothes, smelling like wet char. ever gave a speech after taking the oath. She thanked the judge, she thanked her law school mentors, she thanked her uncle by name. She said he had given her a home after a terrible tragedy and had been the father her father could not be. She did not mention me. She did not mention the 7 years of overnight shifts, the sock drawer, the tablecloth dress, the scholarship forms I filled out for her at 4 in the morning. She thanked one person from her childhood. She thanked the man who had killed our parents. Desmond cried in the front row. He was a beautiful crier. He had been practicing for a long time. I left before the reception. 6 weeks after the swearing-in, Ever called me on a Tuesday night. It was the first time she had called me in 4 months. Her voice was different. It was quieter. She said, "Margaret, did you ever see the fireproof box Mom kept in her closet? The one she kept important documents in?" I said yes. I said I had assumed it burned in the fire. She said Uncle Desmond had recovered it the week after the fire and had kept it in his garage for safekeeping. He had given it to her last weekend when she moved into her new apartment. He said it contained some things she was old enough to handle now. Inside the box, Ever said she had found a letter in my handwriting, dated March 10th, 2009, 3 days before the fire, addressed to no one. Folded into an envelope, she read me a line from it. The line she read was, "I cannot stand how much they love her and not me. I think about what I would do if it were just her and me in the world. I think about it every night now. I am going to do something. I just have not decided what." I stopped breathing. I had never written that letter. I had never written those sentences. I had never thought those thoughts. But I had kept a spiral notebook that year, and Uncle Desmond had emptied the attic twice. He had my handwriting. I told Ever the letter was fake. I told her Desmond had forged it. I told her he had had access to my notebooks for 2 years after the fire. I told her every word I had just heard her read was something I had never written. I told her to bring it to me. I told her to let me hire a forensic document examiner. She said she could not. She said it was in the chain of custody of the district attorney's office now. She said a formal cold case review had been opened. She said she had recused herself from the case, but the charging documents were already being drafted. She said she was sorry. She said she had to believe what the evidence showed. She hung up. 4 months of grand jury sessions. 4 months of forensic handwriting analysis by a state examiner whose wife, I would later learn, was a friend of Desmond's girlfriend. 4 months of Ever not answering my calls. On a Tuesday morning in June, she walked into my office with 2 state detectives behind her. She had recused herself from prosecuting, but nobody had told her she could not be present for the arrest. She had chosen to be present for the arrest. She placed the arrest warrant on my desk. She read me my rights. She did not cry. The 2 detectives walked me out through the lobby in handcuffs. 3 of my coworkers were watching. 1 of them was filming. They held me for 41 hours. The bail hearing was on Thursday morning. The prosecutor, a man named Hollis Brand, who had been Desmond's weekend golf partner for 11 years, asked the judge to deny bail. He said I was a flight risk. He said I was a danger to my sister. He said I had waited 15 years to be caught and might disappear at any moment. The judge granted bail at $500,000. 10% down, cash bond $50,000. I did not have $50,000 in cash. Aunt Saffron flew in from Oregon on a red-eye. She had been quietly saving for 15 years, ever since she had lost the custody fight. She had put away $42,000 for a day she hoped would never come. Priya, my friend from high school, who is now a pediatric dentist, wired me the other $8,000 the morning of the hearing. I walked out of the county jail at 4:11 in the afternoon on Thursday, wearing the clothes I had been arrested in, smelling like the jail blanket. A local news crew was waiting outside the courthouse. They shouted my name. They asked if I had killed my parents. They asked if I had a comment. I kept my head down. I got into Aunt Saffron's rental car. I cried for the first time since the arrest. I did not cry because I was scared. I cried because Ever had not come to the bail hearing. The story broke nationally within 48 hours. Prosecutor's sister charged with killing parents in 2009 fire. Prominent to Evelyn Ashford recuses from case against biological sister. The cable news. Shows ran the photo of me being walked out of my office on a loop. They paired it with Ever's official headshot. They cut to footage of Uncle Desmond standing in his driveway, telling a reporter that he was heartbroken but not surprised, that he had suspected for years, that he had prayed every day that he was wrong. My insurance company put me on unpaid administrative leave. My case files were reassigned. The badge they had issued me for 11 years was collected on a Friday afternoon by a human resources associate who would not make eye contact. I walked out of that office, the second office in a week I had been walked out of, holding a cardboard box with a coffee mug and a framed photo of me and Ever at her Harvard graduation. The lease on my apartment was renewing the next month. My landlord called and told me she was not renewing. Aunt Saffron paid for a motel room by the week. I slept in it for 3 weeks. I did not leave except to meet with my lawyer. My lawyer was a woman named Imani Kenworth. She was 41 years old. She had defended 6 people wrongly accused of arson in her career. She was the only attorney in 3 states who would take my case. Imani asked me, on our 3rd meeting, if there was anyone still alive who had worked the original fire scene in 2009. I told her the lead fire marshal on the case had been a man named Ozias Lathrop. He had retired 2 years after my parents' fire. I had not seen him since I was 18. I had heard he had moved to a cabin in the next county over. We drove out that Saturday. The cabin was at the end of a gravel road with a wood stove chimney and a red door. Ozias was 74. He was thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were the same sharp gray. He recognized me before I finished saying my name. He said, "Ashford, you finally came." He invited us in. He made us coffee. He did not rush. He said, "Your parents' fire was arson." I knew it in the first 90 minutes. I filed my preliminary report that evening. I listed accelerant patterns in 3 locations on the 1st floor. I listed a broken basement window with the glass scattered outward, not inward. I listed a disabled smoke detector in the upstairs hallway with a fresh battery pulled. I named a suspect. I named your uncle. He said, "My supervisor pulled my report on the Monday. He told me the case was being reclassified as undetermined. He told me to burn my notes." He said, "I did not burn my notes." Ozias Lathrop walked us down into the root cellar of his cabin. He had a metal footlocker under a canvas tarp. Inside the footlocker, in a 9x12 manila envelope, were the original handwritten field notes from the Ashford fire of March 14, 2009. He had written them in blue ballpoint on yellow legal paper at 3 a.m. while the house was still smoldering. He had photocopied them and hidden the photocopies in 3 different locations. The envelope had his name on the front and the word Ashford in the corner. The notes listed the accelerant pattern. The notes listed the disabled detector. The notes listed Mrs. Houston's 2:12 a.m. witness statement, identifying a red Chevrolet Silverado pickup with a dented tailgate parked on the next street over. The notes listed Desmond's name. Imani photographed every page in the footlocker with a forensic camera. She took possession of the originals under a signed chain of custody. Ozias signed an affidavit stating the notes were authentic, had been in his continuous private possession since the morning of March 14, 2009, and had been withheld from the official case file by his supervisor, a man named Garrett Fisher, under circumstances he believed at the time to be improper, and still believed today. Imani asked Ozias why he had not come forward before. Ozias said, "Nobody asked." He said, "You never asked, Margaret, and for 15 years, nobody else did either." I sat on his couch and I put my face in my hands. I had kept my mother's last voicemail for 15 years. Every time I upgraded my phone, I did the same thing. I played the voicemail into a digital recorder. I saved the digital recorder file as a WAV on a thumb drive. I mailed a copy of the thumb drive to a safety deposit box in Aunt Saffron's name in Oregon. I had 4 copies in 4 different places on 4 different coasts. I had never played the voicemail forever. Not once. She had been 10. She had been traumatized. The voicemail made our mother sound frightened, and I could not bear to put that sound into my little sister's head when she was a child, and by the time she was old enough, we were already drifting apart. Imani asked if she could play the voicemail at the pre-trial motion hearing. I said yes. The hearing was set for a Tuesday in September, 4 months after the arrest. The courtroom was full. Hollis Brand sat at the prosecution table. A junior ADA sat next to him. Ever was in the third row, in a dark suit, alone. Amani stood at the podium and told the judge she had newly discovered evidence. She laid out the original 2009 field notes. The judge read them for 11 minutes in silence. Amani then asked the court to hear a 47-second audio file, authenticated by the carrier as received by my phone at 12:41 a.m. on March 14, 2009. The judge allowed it. The courtroom was silent. The bailiff played the voicemail on the courtroom sound system. My mother's voice filled the room. She sounded tired. She sounded scared. She said my name the way she had said it my whole life. "Margaret, honey, if you wake up in the night, please call me. Your Uncle Desmond showed up at the house tonight. He is saying things. He is asking about Grandma's will again. Dad asked him to leave twice. I don't like this. Call me when you wake. I love you, baby." 47 seconds. It felt like an hour. When it ended, the courtroom did not move. I heard one spectator in the gallery crying softly. Hollis Brand stared at his own legal pad without writing. The judge leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her nose. Ever, in the third row, had both hands over her mouth. I could see her shoulders shaking. She did not look at me. She could not. Amani said to the court, "Your Honor, my client received this voicemail at 12:41 in the morning, 2 hours and 36 minutes before the fire. The voicemail references the defendant's uncle, Desmond Ashford, the same individual named in the suppressed original fire marshal's report. The same individual whose truck was identified by a neighbor witness at 2:12 in the morning on the next street over. I would respectfully ask this court to question whose jealousy, exactly, was the motive here." The judge ordered a recess. She did not come back for 90 minutes. During the recess, Amani walked over to the gallery rail. She handed Ever a photograph. It was a photograph of a small metal object. A red and silver gas can cap with a chipped rim. Amani said, loud enough for the bailiff to hear, "Your sister pulled this out of the debris at your house when she was 17 years old. She pulled it out 2 days after the fire, during the public walkthrough. She kept it in a sealed evidence bag in a climate-controlled storage locker for 15 years. She never touched it with bare skin once. We had it tested last month. There are 3 partial thumbprints on it. 2 of them belong to your Uncle Desmond. The third is a palm smear that matches the same profile. The cap is from a red 5-gallon gas container sold at 3 regional hardware stores in March of 2009. Your uncle purchased one on March 11, 2009. We have the store receipt." She put the photograph on the rail and walked back to the defense table. Ever picked up the photograph. She did not put it down for the rest of the recess. She stared at the rim. She stared at her own hands. Once, she looked up at me. Once. Her eyes were wet. Her mouth was open. I did not nod at her. I did not smile. I did not soften my face. I had raised her. I had loved her for 25 years. But on that Tuesday, I was not her sister. I was her evidence. When the court came back from recess, Amani did not stop. She introduced a third exhibit, a certified forensic accounting report prepared by a CPA named Odalis Bremner. The report traced every dollar of the 2009 insurance payout, $840,000, from its original deposit into a trust account in the names of Margaret and Evelyn Ashford, through 61 separate transactions over 5 years, into Uncle Desmond's personal holdings. Of the $840,000, $94,000 had been spent on documented expenses for the minor children. The remaining $746,000 had been moved, $120,000 into his construction company to pay off back debts, $211,000 into the down payment on a new house he bought in 2011 and rented out, $260,000 into a second property in 2013. The rest into personal vehicles, 2 boats, 1 vacation to Aruba, and $81,000 in cash withdrawals over 7 years, averaging $11,000 per year. The trust had been drained to $41 and change by the time I turned 21, and the state officially transferred control of nothing to me. The report was certified. The report was forensic grade. The report was admissible. The judge looked up from the pages. She looked at Hollis Brand. She said, "Mr. Brand, I'm going to ask you one question. Where is Desmond Ashford right now?" Brand did not have an answer. Desmond was not in town. He had driven to a motel in Tennessee the morning after my arrest, 4 months earlier. He had told his girlfriend he was going fishing. He had left her with $700 in cash and a note. He had not returned. He had been moving between 3 motels in 3 states for 4 months, paying in cash, using a burner phone. The FBI found him on a Wednesday, 31 hours after the pretrial hearing. He was eating breakfast at a Waffle House off Interstate 40 in western Tennessee. He was wearing a baseball cap and a gray windbreaker. He did not resist. He asked the arresting agent if he could finish his coffee. The agent said no. They brought him back to our state on Friday. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated arson, 1 count of obstruction of justice, 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of elder fraud for the misuse trust that was supposed to protect minors, and 1 count of conspiracy. The conspiracy charge referenced an unnamed second person. We still did not know who that was. His bail was denied. The charges against me were formally dismissed on Monday morning at 10:15 by a different judge with prejudice after a joint motion by the defense and the state. Hollis Brand did not appear at the hearing. He was on administrative leave pending an internal ethics review. I walked out of the courtroom with Aunt Saffron on one arm and Imani on the other. Ever was not there. Ever came to my apartment that Friday night. She did not call ahead. She drove 3 hours from the county seat. She pulled up at 11:40 in a gray sedan. I had never seen her drive. She sat on my porch in the dark for 26 minutes before she knocked. I opened the door. She had been crying. Her eye makeup was dried in streaks on her cheeks. Her hair was pulled back. She was wearing sweatpants and a law school hoodie from Yale. She looked 25 and 10 at the same time. She said, "Margaret, please." I stood in the doorway. I did not step back. I did not invite her in. She said, "I believed him. For 15 years. I was 10 years old, and he told me stories and I believed them. I built my whole life on believing them. I chose this career because of him. I chose my apartment because he helped me pick it. I bought my car from his friend. Every piece of my adult life is something he put in my hands and I took. Margaret, I am begging you, let me come inside." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the pancake house. I thought about the sock drawer. I thought about the tablecloth dress. I thought about the day I walked her into her Harvard dorm. I said, "Everlyn, I forgive you." I said, "But not tonight." I closed the door. Desmond's trial started in February of the following year and lasted 19 days. I testified for 6 hours on the 4th day. Ever testified for 4 hours on the 7th day. She took the stand for the prosecution against her uncle, and she did not look at him once. She walked the jury through every conversation he had ever had with her about me. Every whispered worry. Every forged doubt. She testified about the fireproof box. She testified about the forged letter. She testified about the night I told her on the phone the letter was fake, and I needed her to trust me, and she did not. The jury was out for 5 hours and 40 minutes. They returned with guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Uncle Desmond to 2 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole after 37 years, plus 21 additional years on the fraud and obstruction counts to run concurrently. He was 55 years old. He would die in prison. As the bailiffs walked him out, he turned his head toward the gallery. He looked forever. She was staring at the floor. He looked for me. I held his eyes. I did not smile. I did not glare. I let him see my face the way my mother had looked at him the last time she asked him to leave the house. Aunt Saffron squeezed my hand. Then the doors closed behind him. It was the first peaceful breath I had taken in 15 years. On the Sunday after the sentencing, Ever and I met at the cemetery. We had not spoken in the 3 months since the porch. She was in a black coat, I was in a gray one. We stood at our parents' shared headstone for a long time without saying anything. She had brought white lilies. I had brought lavender, which had been our mother's favorite. She said, "I want to earn my way back. Not fast. Not dramatic. Over years, if you will let me." I said, "Years is what we have." She asked if she could hug me. I said yes. I hugged her for 10 seconds. Then I let go. As we walked back to the cars, She mentioned something her office had pulled during discovery that the defense team had never followed up on. In the conspiracy count, there had been an unnamed second person. The prosecutor had believed it was Hollis Brand, the disgraced ADA. But a handwritten note from Desmond's motel room, recovered during his arrest in Tennessee, had referenced a first name. A first name I had not heard in 15 years. A first name that was not Hollis. A first name that belonged to my mother's younger brother. My uncle Tobias, who lived in Florida, who had flown in for the funeral, who had hugged me at the grave, and told me he would always be there. I have not called him yet, but I will, and when I do, I will tell you exactly what he says. If this story touched something deep within you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice belongs here. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, or you're still piecing it together quietly, know you're not alone. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and stay close. The next story is waiting for you. My uncle stood in my parents' kitchen, sipping coffee from my mother's favorite mug, and watched the police put handcuffs on me. I was 22 years old. My parents had been dead for 2 years, and the man who promised to protect me after the funeral was about to steal $3.5 million, then watch me rot in a cell for a murder I did not commit. He leaned down close to my ear, so only I could hear him. His breath smelled like my mom's coffee. He whispered, "You should have just signed the papers, Hannah." The officer turned my wrists. The metal bit into my skin. My knees almost gave out. I looked at the kitchen table where my mom used to braid my hair before school. Now Marcus was sitting at it, in my dad's chair, drinking from my mom's mug, like he had always belonged there. He smiled at the officer. He said, "Take care of her. She has been through so much." His voice cracked on cue. The neighbors were watching from their porches. I could feel every eye on the street. As the officer lowered me into the cruiser, Marcus stood on the front steps, one hand pressed over his mouth like a grieving uncle. What he did not know, what nobody knew, was that my father had left me one small envelope, in one small safety deposit box in one small bank. 10 weeks later, that envelope would bury him. My name is Hannah Blake. Before the next reveal, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me your city and local time. It's incredible seeing this community from everywhere. Now let's get back into it. Before all of this, I was nobody you would notice in a crowd. I liked old books and old engines. My dad ran a small engineering firm and taught me how to change the oil in a 1972 Chevy when I was 9 years old. My hands always smelled like grease and coffee. My mom was a high school English teacher. She slipped little sticky notes into my lunchbox until the day I graduated, things like, "Be kind today," and "Don't forget to eat." I kept every one of them in a shoebox under my bed. We were not rich. We were happy, which is different. My dad worked 7 days a week for 25 years. He came home for dinner every single night. He sold his company when I was 20, $3.5 million. He came home with a smaller paycheck and a bigger smile than I had ever seen on his face. He said, "Hannah, I built it for you. Every wrench, every late night, every gray hair, it is yours." He put every cent into a trust in my name. He told me I would never have to work a day in my life unless I wanted to. He told me the world was finally going to be soft for us. 6 months later, the world was the hardest it had ever been, and I learned a lesson I will never forget. The people you trust most are the ones who can destroy you the fastest. It was a Thursday. My mom was driving them home from a small dinner at their favorite Italian place. They had ordered the same meal for 15 years. My dad always said the bread was worth the drive. The intersection was 3 blocks from our house. The driver of the truck had a blood alcohol level 4 times the legal limit. He ran a red light at 52 miles an hour. The police told me my mom probably never saw it coming. They told me it like it was supposed to be a kindness. The phone rang at 9:47 in the evening. I had been doing laundry. I remember the sound of the dryer behind me when the officer said the words. I remember dropping the basket. I remember the sound of socks hitting the floor. I do not remember the next 48 hours at all. My Uncle Marcus showed up at my door the next morning with a casserole and red eyes. He hugged me so tight I could not breathe. He said, "I am here, sweetheart. I am here." I sobbed into his shoulder for an hour. I had no other family. My mom was an only child. My dad's parents were long gone. Marcus was the last name on the emergency contact list. So when he offered to move into the house and help me handle everything, I said yes. He was my dad's older brother. He had my dad's eyes. I thought that meant something. That was the most expensive mistake of my entire life. In the first month, Marcus was perfect. Too perfect. I should have noticed. He cooked. He cleaned. He answered phone calls I could not bear to take. He sat with me when I cried at 3 a.m. over a song my mom used to hum. He held my hand at the lawyer's office when they read the will. He paid the funeral home in cash and waved off the receipt. People at church called him a saint. Neighbors brought him cookies. My best friend's mother told me, "Honey, you are so lucky to have him." I started to believe her. The trust paperwork was complicated. My parents had named Marcus as co-trustee, in case of emergency. That is what he said. I never read the documents myself. I was 20 years old and I could not get out of bed most mornings without forgetting how. Marcus told me to focus on healing. He told me to finish my final year at college. He told me he would handle everything. I let him. He took the keys to my dad's home office. He took the keys to the family's safe. He took my dad's laptop and said he was organizing the business files. He took my mother's jewelry box just to keep it secure. Every time he took something, he kissed the top of my head. Every time he took something, I said thank you. The first month, he stole my trust gently. I did not even feel it leaving my hands. By the second month, Marcus had changed every lock in the house. He said it was for security. New keys hung on a hook by the front door. None of them fit any door I needed to open. My dad's office, the safe room in the basement, the garage where my dad and I had spent every Saturday of my childhood, all of them locked, all of the keys on Marcus's belt. I asked him about it once. He laughed and said, "Hannah, you don't even use that office. Why do you need a key?" He said it gently, like I was being silly. I felt silly for asking, so I stopped asking. Then he sold my dad's truck, the 1972 Chevy, the one we had restored together over 6 summers, the one I had learned to drive in, the one my dad had told me, 10 weeks before he died, would be mine someday. Marcus came home one Tuesday afternoon, and the truck was just gone. He said a buyer had offered cash. He said he had put the money in the trust. I cried in the shower for 2 hours. I did not let him hear me. Something inside me was starting to wake up. Something quiet and cold and watchful. But it was still small, still buried under grief. Marcus brought me dinner that night. He kissed the top of my head. He said, "I know it hurts, sweetheart, but your dad would want us to move forward." Move forward, that is what he kept saying. The papers started coming in the 3rd month. They came in soft stacks, slid across the kitchen table after dinner, while I was still finishing my tea. Power of attorney forms, authorization letters, investment approvals, trust amendments, insurance updates. He always slid them across with the same calm smile. He always said the same 5 words. "Just a formality, sweetheart. Trust." He had a black ballpoint pen ready in his hand. He had little yellow tabs marking every line where I needed to sign. He never gave me time to read them. He would start talking the second I picked up the pen. About the weather. About my mom. About a memory of my dad that made me tear up just enough that the words on the page blurred. I signed the first 3 without reading a single line. The 4th one, I tried to read. He laughed and said, "Hannah, you are not a lawyer. Don't give yourself a headache." He took the pen out of my hand and put it back in. He guided my hand to the line. I signed. Looking back now, I can see exactly what he was doing. He was rewriting my entire life on those pieces of paper, one yellow tab at a time. He was making himself the only signatory on the trust. He was naming himself the sole beneficiary if anything happened to me. He was building the trap, and I was the one filling out the forms that would lock the door behind me. The question slipped out one Friday night in late October. We were eating spaghetti. Marcus was watching the news. I was thinking about my dad. I do not even know why I asked. The words just came out of my mouth. I said, "Marcus, how much is left in the trust?" The fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The spaghetti hung there in the air. The television was still talking about a storm, But the kitchen went so quiet I could hear the clock above the stove ticking. He set the fork down, slowly, carefully, like a man placing a knife back in a drawer. He looked at me, and for one full second, the mask slipped. I saw it. I saw the man underneath. His eyes were flat. His mouth was a straight line. There was no warmth in his face at all. He looked at me the way a hunter looks at a deer he has not yet decided whether to shoot. Then the mask snapped back. He smiled. He picked up his fork. He twirled the spaghetti like nothing had happened. He said, "Sweetheart, don't you worry about that. Your dad set everything up beautifully. You are taken care of for life." I nodded, I smiled, I ate the rest of my spaghetti. But that night, alone in my bed, I lay awake until dawn, because I had seen the real Marcus for 1 second. And the real Marcus was a man I did not know at all. I was suddenly, finally, afraid. After that night, I started watching him, quietly. The way you watch a snake in the corner of a room. I noticed things. He locked his bedroom door now, every single time he left the house. He took phone calls in the garage with the door closed. His voice was different on those calls, lower, faster, a voice he did not use with me. He started bringing home expensive things, a new watch, new shoes, a leather briefcase that cost more than my dad's old truck. When I asked where the money was coming from, he smiled and said, "Side investments, sweetheart, don't you worry about it." He was always telling me not to worry. I started worrying constantly. I tried to log into my dad's old email account. The password had been changed. I tried to call my dad's accountant. The number had been disconnected. I tried to find the original trust documents in the file cabinet in Dad's office. The cabinet was empty. Every paper that proved who I was, who my parents had been, what I owned, was gone. I sat on the floor of my dad's empty office and felt the walls of my own house close in around me. I was not safe. I had not been safe for a long time. I just had not known it. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about my dad. I whispered into the dark, "Daddy, what do I do?" The answer would come 3 weeks later. Harold Finch had been my dad's accountant for 16 years. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and a soft voice. He came to every Christmas dinner. He had taught me how to balance a checkbook when I was 12. My dad once said, "Harold has seen more of my money than I have." When my parents died, Harold sent me a handwritten card. Marcus had thrown it in the trash. I had fished it back out and kept it in my drawer. I had not heard from Harold since the funeral. Then on a Tuesday afternoon in November, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered out of habit. Harold's voice was on the other end. He sounded tired. He sounded scared. He said, "Hannah, I need to meet with you. Alone, without Marcus. I need you to tell nobody you are coming." My heart started pounding so hard, I had to sit down on the bottom step of the stairs. I asked him what was wrong. He said, "I cannot say it on the phone, just meet me. There is something your father would have wanted you to see. Something I should have shown you a long time ago." We agreed on Friday morning, 8 o'clock, at a small diner near his office on the other side of town. He told me to come alone. He told me to leave my phone in the car. He told me to trust nobody. Then he hung up. I never heard his voice again. I told Marcus I was going for an early run. He nodded without looking up from his coffee. I drove 20 miles across town with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The diner was a little place with red booths and yellow lights. I got there at 7:50. I sat in a booth by the window. I ordered coffee I could not drink. I watched the door. 8 o'clock came. 8:15. 8:30. 9. 10. The waitress refilled my cup 3 times. She started looking at me with quiet pity. By 11, I knew Harold was not coming. I tried calling the number he had used. It rang and then went to a generic mailbox. I tried again. Same thing. I sat in that booth until almost noon. Some part of me kept hoping he had been delayed. A flat tire, traffic, anything. Finally, I paid for my coffee and walked out to my car. I sat in the parking lot for another hour, just staring at the door of the diner, wishing him through it. He did not come. I drove home slowly. I felt sick to my stomach the whole way. When I walked through the front door, Marcus was standing in the kitchen. He was on his phone. He looked up at me and smiled. He said into the phone, "I have to go. She just walked in." Then he hung up. He did not tell me who he had been talking to. That night, I could not sleep. Something terrible was coming. The knock came at 11:47 that same night. I know the exact time because I was lying in bed staring at my phone. 3 sharp knocks. Then 3 more. Then a man's voice, calm and clear. "Police, open the door please." Marcus got there first. I heard his sleepers on the hardwood. I heard him unlock the door. I heard him say, "Officer, what is going on?" His voice was perfect. Surprised, concerned. The voice of a man who had no idea what was about to happen. I came down the stairs in my pajamas. There were 4 officers in the entryway, 2 uniforms, 2 detectives. The lead detective was a tall woman with kind eyes. She asked me my name. I told her. She asked if I knew Harold Finch. I said yes, he was my father's accountant. Her eyes flickered. She glanced at Marcus. He was standing behind me, one hand resting gently on my shoulder, his face arranged into a perfect mask of confused worry. The detective said, "Hannah, Harold Finch was found dead in his car this evening in a parking garage downtown. He was shot once in the head. My legs went out from under me. Marcus cut up me. He held me up. He said, oh my God, sweetheart." The detective said, "We need to ask you some questions, including where you were this morning between 8 and noon." I looked at her. I opened my mouth, and I felt Marcus's fingers tighten on my shoulder. Hard. A warning. I understood everything in that single second. They arrested me at the station 3 hours later. The evidence had appeared like magic. My fingerprints were on the driver's side door of Harold's car. Threatening text messages from my phone had been sent to him for weeks. A witness had seen a young woman matching my description leaving the parking garage that morning. My alibi, sitting alone in a diner I had never been to before, with no security camera that worked, was the worst alibi a person could possibly have. I told them about Marcus. I told them everything. They wrote it down. They nodded politely. They did nothing. The court-appointed lawyer they gave me was a man named Stephen, who had 11 other cases that week. He met me for 9 minutes. He smelled like cheap aftershave. He told me to plead not guilty and to keep my mouth shut. The arraignment was the next morning. The prosecutor was sharp, clean, and angry. She called me a spoiled trust fund kid who had killed an old man to protect a crime. She said I was a flight risk because I had access to millions. The judge denied bail. I remember turning around in the courtroom. Marcus was sitting in the 3rd row, in a black suit, his hands folded in his lap. His eyes were full of tears. He mouthed the words, "I love you, sweetheart." For the cameras, for the reporters, for the world. The deputies led me out the side door. The metal door slammed behind me. The sound is still in my bones to this day. The county jail at 3 in the morning is a place I would not wish on my worst enemy. The lights stay on. The toilets do not flush. Somewhere, always, a woman is crying. Somewhere, always, a woman is screaming at someone who is not there. The mattress was 2 inches thick. The blanket smelled like bleach and despair. I sat on the edge of the metal bunk, and I could not even cry. The shock had hollowed me out completely. My cellmate was an older woman named Denise. She was in for writing bad checks. She watched me for a long time without saying anything. Then she got up and sat next to me on the bunk. She said, "Honey, what did they say you did?" I told her. My voice, it did not sound like mine. She listened. Then she nodded slowly and said, "Someone set you up." I asked her how she knew. She said, "Because guilty women come in here loud. Innocent women come in here quiet. You came in quiet." I started crying then. She let me. She did not touch me. She just sat there. After a long time she said, "Whoever did this to you is somebody close. Somebody who knew exactly what to take. Think hard, baby. Think about who in your life would benefit if you disappeared for 25 years. I already knew. I had known the moment Marcus's fingers tightened on my shoulder. But hearing her say it out loud made it real. And it made me angry. For the first time in 2 years, I was angry. His name was Tyler. We had been together for almost 3 years. He had cried at my parents' funeral. He had moved his toothbrush into my bathroom a year before everything fell apart. He visited me in the jail twice in the first week. The first visit, he held the phone with a shaking hand and told me he believed me. The second visit, he could not look at me through the glass. The third week, he stopped coming. The fourth week, he sent a letter through my lawyer. He said it was too much. He said his parents were concerned about his future. He said he hoped I would understand. He said he would always care about me. He said he was sorry. I read the letter twice. Then I tore it into small pieces and flushed it down the metal toilet. I did not cry. The grief and the anger and the betrayal had stacked so high inside me that there was no room left for tears about a boy. I lay on my bunk that night and stared at the ceiling and made a list in my head. A list of every person who had walked away from me in the first 30 days. My boyfriend, 2 of my best friends, the pastor of my parents' church, my academic advisor, the neighbor my mom had baked bread for every Sunday for 15 years. Every single one of them had believed Marcus. Every single one of them had believed the kind uncle on the news. The world had a new villain, and her name was Hannah. Denise sneaked me a newspaper on day 36. Marcus was on the front page. He was sitting on my parents' porch swing in a soft gray sweater, holding a framed photo of my mom. The headline read, "An Uncle's Heartbreak. I tried to save her." The interview ran 2 full pages. He talked about how I had changed after my parents died, how I had become withdrawn and angry, how he had tried to get me into therapy, how he had begged me to slow down on the spending. He said he had hidden Harold's calls from me because he was worried about my mental state. He said he blamed himself. He said he should have seen it coming. He said the family was shattered. There was a photo of him at my parents' graves, kneeling, a single white rose in his hand. The reporter described him as a broken man trying to hold what is left of a family together. I read the whole interview twice. My hands were shaking by the end. I read the smaller headline at the bottom of the page. Blake estate to be liquidated to cover legal fees and family costs. He was selling everything. The house, the cars, my mother's piano, my grandmother's china, every photograph, every memory, every thread of the people I had loved most in the world. He was heiressing them, and the entire town was helping him do it. I lay on my bunk and stared at his face on the page, and I remembered a silver key. It came back to me at 2:14 in the morning. I sat straight up in the bunk like someone had shaken me. My 18th birthday. My dad in the kitchen, flipping pancakes. He had handed me a small silver key in a tiny velvet pouch. He had not made a speech. He had not made a big deal of it. He had just placed it in my palm and folded my fingers around it. He had said, "Hannah, this is for box 412 at First Heritage Bank downtown. If something ever happens, if something ever doesn't feel right, you open it. Not before." Then he had handed me a plate of pancakes and gone back to humming under his breath like he had just told me the time. I had asked him what was in the box. He had smiled at me with the saddest, kindest smile I had ever seen on his face. He had said, "Hopefully, sweetheart, you will never need to find out." I had put the key in an old watch case my grandfather had given me. I had pushed it to the back of my dresser drawer. I had not thought about it for 4 years. Now, sitting on a metal bunk at 2:14 in the morning, in a county jail uniform, I could not stop thinking about it. My dad had known. Somehow, before he died, he had known what his brother was capable of. He had left me a weapon. And the weapon was sitting in a dresser drawer in a house Marcus was about to sell. Marcus came to the jail on day 41. He came alone. He wore a charcoal suit and a sad, tender expression. He sat down across from me behind the thick glass and picked up the phone. He waited for me to pick up mine. I did, slowly. He smiled. He said, "Sweetheart, you look feeding you?" I did not answer. I just looked at him. He sighed like a disappointed parent. He said, "Hannah, I am here to help you. I have spoken to a private attorney, the best in the state. He thinks he can get this knocked down to manslaughter, maybe even time served." My heart skipped. For one terrible second, I almost believed him. Then he said the next sentence. "But to pay for him, I need you to sign one last document. It gives me full discretion over the trust. Just a formality, sweetheart. Just a formality." Those 4 words. I stared at him through the glass. And I saw it again, the flicker, the tiny smile of satisfaction at the corner of his mouth. He was enjoying this. He was savoring it. I leaned closer to the glass. I said, very quietly, "No." He blinked. He said, "Hannah, you will sit in here for 25 years without me." I said, "Then I will sit." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he stood up. He smoothed his tie. He said into the phone, "I tried, sweetheart. Remember that. I tried." Then he walked out. 3 days later, he sold my mother's piano. I found out about the piano from a woman named Carla in the laundry detail. Her cousin worked at an estate auction house downtown. Carla pulled me aside near the dryers and said, "Honey, isn't your last name Blake?" I said yes. She said, "My cousin called me last night. There was an auction yesterday. A baby grand piano sold for $38,000. The seller's name was Marcus Blake." I had to lean against the wall to stay upright. My mother had played that piano every single Sunday morning of my entire life. She had taught me Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on those keys when I was 4. She had cried tears of joy on those keys the day I got into college. She had played Claire de Lune on the night before she died, while my dad and I sat on the couch and listened. He had reached over and squeezed my hand. He had whispered, "We are so lucky, kiddo." That piano was not furniture. That piano was my mother's heartbeat, and Marcus had sold it for $38,000 to pay his lawyer's retainer. Something inside me snapped that night, not loudly, quietly, cleanly, like a wire under tension finally giving way. I went to the guard. I asked Ed for one phone call. He told me it was after hours. I asked again. There was something in my face this time. He looked at me for a long second. Then he nodded. He led me to the phone. I dialed a number from memory, the number on a small white business card. The card belonged to a public defender named Elena Alvarez. She had been in the courtroom on the day of my arraignment. She had not been my lawyer. She had been representing somebody else entirely. But when they had led me out, she had pressed her business card into my hand in the hallway. She had said, "I do not know your story, but your eyes do not match what they are saying about you. Call me if you need to talk, day or night." I had kept the card folded in the elastic of my underwear since the day I was processed. It was the only thing in the world that was still mine. The phone rang 4 times. A sleepy voice answered. "Alvarez," I said. "My name is Anna Blake. You gave me your card 41 days ago. I think I'm going to die in here if you do not help me." There was a pause. I could hear her sit up in bed. I could hear a lamp click on. She said, "Hannah, I have been watching your case from the sidelines. I have been waiting for this call." I started to cry. I could not help it. She let me. After a long moment, she said, "Tell me everything. Start at the beginning. Take your time. I am not going anywhere." I talked for 45 minutes. I told her about the locks, the papers, the diner, the fingerprints, the texts, the boyfriend, the piano. And finally, I told her about a small silver key in an old watch case in my dresser drawer. Elena Alvarez was 34 years old. She had been a public defender for 9 years. Her father had been wrongfully convicted of armed robbery when she was 7. He had served 11 years before DNA cleared him. He had died of a heart attack 3 months after his release. She had become a lawyer for one reason. She told me later, the moment I said the words, "My dad left me a key," she felt her father standing in the room with her. She had already been quietly investigating my case for 41 days. She had noticed things. The threatening text from my phone had been sent from a cell tower 3 miles from where I had actually been that morning. The witness description was vague enough to fit 10,000 young women. The fingerprints on Harold's car door were on the outside handle only, exactly where a hand would land if it had been pressed there. And 6 weeks before Harold died, Marcus had taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on himself, with the trust as the sole beneficiary. She had been waiting for one piece of leverage, one piece of evidence the prosecution did not control, one piece of truth that did not come from Marcus's mouth. Now I had handed her one. She told me to hold on. She told me to trust nobody. She told me she was driving to my parents' house at first light. She told me, "Hannah, listen to me carefully. If your father left you a key, your father left you a way out. We are going to find it." Elena got to my parents' house at 6:14 the next morning. Marcus was not home. He was at the country club, playing golf with his lawyer. Elena had timed it. She had a court order in her purse for emergency property access. She walked through the front door of the house I had grown up in, the house Marcus was about to sell, and she felt a chill go up her spine. Most of the rooms were already empty. My bedroom was bare. The dresser was gone. The bed was gone. Even the curtains were gone. She stood in the middle of the empty room for a long moment. She breathed slowly. She thought like a thief. Then she walked into the garage. The garage was full of boxes. Marcus had been too lazy to drive them to Goodwill. He had labeled 3 of them in black marker. Donate. Elena dropped to her knees and started opening boxes. The first box was old clothes. The second box was kitchen junk. The third box was filled with random drawer contents: pens, coins, a broken watch, a pair of reading glasses, and at the very bottom, an old leather watch case. She lifted it out with trembling hands. She opened it. Inside, on a small bed of red velvet, was a silver key with the number 412 engraved on the side. Elena Alvarez sat down on the cold concrete floor of my parents' garage and loghead out loud. Then she got in her car. She drove straight to First Heritage Bank downtown. She did not stop for coffee. She did not stop for anything. The bank manager was an older woman named Mrs. Patel. Elena showed her the key, the court order, and her bar credentials. Mrs. Patel walked her down a long marble hallway into a small windowless room and pulled box 412 from the wall. She set it on the table. She closed the door behind her. Elena was alone. She slid the key into the lock. She lifted the lid. Inside the box was a single thick manila envelope. Nothing else. Elena's hands were shaking so hard she had to set the envelope on the table to open it. Inside the envelope were 3 things. First, a folded letter in my father's handwriting. The paper was soft from being handled. He had clearly written it more than once. The letter said, "Hannah, if you are reading this, then Marcus has done what I have been afraid he would do for 20 years. I am sorry. I did not warn you out loud. I did not want to poison your memory of your uncle until I had proof beyond doubt. The proof is in this envelope. Trust the documents below. Trust nothing your uncle says. Your mother and I love you more than the entire world. Protect yourself, sweetheart. I am still your father, even from here, Dad." Elena read the letter twice. Then she pulled out the second item, a 19-page forensic accountant's report. And then the third item, a small silver flash drive, no bigger than her thumb. She knew, before she even plugged it in, that Marcus Blake was finished. The forensic accountant's name was Patricia Hall. She was a former IRS investigator. My father had quietly hired her 8 months before he died. He had paid her in cash. Her report traced $318,000 that Marcus had skimmed from my dad's company over a 7-year period. Fake vendors, phantom invoices, shell accounts, every cent documented, every transaction stamped. The report ended with one chilling sentence. Mr. Blake informed me during our final consultation that he believed his brother would attempt to harm him in the near future. He asked me to preserve all records in the event of his death. My father had known. He had known he might die. The flash drive held 12 audio files. They were phone calls my father had recorded over the final year of his life. In one call, dated 3 weeks before the accident, Marcus's voice came through clear and cold. He said, "Robert, I am telling you for the last time. That money should have been split between us when our father died. If anything ever happens to you, I will make sure that kid never sees a dime of what should have been mine." Elena Alvarez sat in her office at 11 o'clock that night. She listened to the recording 4 times in a row. Then she picked up her phone. She did not call her supervisor. She did not call Marcus's lawyer. She called the district attorney's personal cell phone. She said, "You have the wrong woman in jail, and I can prove it before lunch tomorrow." The DA was at her office in 15 minutes. It took the district attorney 3 weeks of urgent reinvestigation. Phone tower data was pulled. Marcus had sent the threatening messages from a parking lot 2 blocks from his accountant's office. New gas station footage placed his car at the murder garage 20 minutes before Harold was killed. Patricia Hall was found in Arizona and flown back. She brought 7 additional pages of evidence. The pre-trial hearing was called on a cold Thursday morning. The courtroom was small, maybe 40 people inside. Marcus was in the front row in a gray suit holding a single white rose. He had brought it for me. He smiled at me when the deputies led me in. The smile was tender. The smile was performative. The smile was about to die. Elena stood up. Her voice was quiet. She said, "Your Honor, the defense moves to introduce new evidence." The DA stood up next. She said, "Your Honor, the people joined the motion." Marcus's face froze. Elena pressed play on a small black speaker. My father's voice filled the courtroom. Then Marcus's voice answered. That kid will never see a dime." A woman in the back of the courtroom gasped. The judge leaned forward. Marcus's hand started to tremble. The white rose slipped from his fingers and landed on the floor at his feet. The DA said, "Your Honor, the people moved to dismiss all charges against the defendant and to arrest Marcus Blake for first-degree murder, grand larceny, evidence tampering, and insurance fraud." Two deputies walked toward the front row. Marcus tried to stand. His legs did not work. The deputies had to help him up. The cuffs went on in front of 40 witnesses and 3 reporters. He turned to me as they led him past the defense table. His face had collapsed. The mask was gone. There was nothing left underneath but a small, frightened, ordinary man. He said, "Hannah, please." His voice cracked. This time, it was real. I did not answer him. I just watched. The trial took 8 months. The jury was out for 4 hours. Life without parole on the murder. 22 additional years on the financial charges. He was 61 years old. He will die in a state prison. The trust was frozen, then restored. Most of the money came back. The $2 million insurance policy was voided. My parents' house was returned to me by court order. I bought back my mother's piano. It cost me $46,000 more than the original price. I did not blink. Elena Alvarez opened her own firm 6 months later. I was her first hire as an office assistant while I finished my degree. I drove out to the cemetery the weekend after the verdict. I put 2 white roses on my parents' graves. I told them everything. I told them about the box. I told them about Elena. I sat there for a long time. On the drive home, I realized something. My dad had loved me enough to protect me from beyond the grave. Some people think revenge is loud. Mine was quiet. 1 small envelope, 1 small box, 1 small bank. If this story struck a chord deep inside you, pour your thoughts into the comments below. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ashes, or you're still quietly rebuilding it piece by piece, you're exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and stay close for the next story. My mother-in-law raised her wine glass at the head of the Thanksgiving table and smiled at 14 guests. "Before we eat," she said, "I think my son deserves to know exactly who he married." Then she lifted a cream linen portfolio from beside her chair and placed it in front of Donovan. I was 7 months pregnant. My hands were resting on my stomach. The room had gone quiet enough that I could hear the antique clock counting down the seconds. "My name is Jessica Winston. I am 33 years old. I had been married to Donovan for 2 years, and his mother, Skylar, had hated me from the first afternoon I walked into her foyer. Unknown to her, fate had already set its trap. As her eyes followed my husband's hand reaching for the portfolio she had so meticulously crafted, the cruel irony was that I had already trespassed into her sanctuary that morning, slipping into her bedroom while she sang unaware in the shower above. The portfolio she was about to open in front of God, her pastor, and her late husband's business partners had been opened by me first. The contents had been replaced. The papers she thought would destroy me were folded inside my coat lining in the hallway closet. What sat in front of Donovan now belonged to me. Skylar smiled at me across the candles. She thought she had won. She had no idea the camera in the corner of the dining room had been recording for 3 months. Before I tell you what was inside that portfolio, drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels by morning. I work as a senior marketing director for a healthcare brand in Boston. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. My father drove a delivery truck. My mother was a school nurse. They taught me 2 things: work hard and never raise your voice in someone else's house. I went to a state college, paid for it myself, graduated with honors, and built a career 1 careful step at a time. By the time I met Donovan, I was running my own team and signing my own lease. I did not need rescuing. I was not looking for old money. I was looking for a person. Donovan and I met 3 years ago at a charity event for children's hospitals. He laughed at one of my jokes. I noticed he laughed with his whole face, the way honest people laugh. Within 6 months, we were engaged. He came from a different world. His family had a name in Boston that opened doors I had never seen before. His grandfather had built a shipping company. His father had grown it into a small empire. And his mother had spent 40 years making sure everyone remembered who the Winstons were. That weight was about to land on me. His father, Xavier, popularly known as Citizen X, was kind to me from the first dinner. He took me aside that night in the library, poured me a small glass of port, and told me his son had finally chosen well. He said it quietly, the way men say things they do not want their wives to hear. Xavier was the only Winston who treated me like family from the start. He read the marketing reports I worked on. He asked me about my parents. He sent my mother a basket of pears from his orchard on her birthday every year without telling me. Skylar smiled through all of it. She smiled at our engagement dinner. She smiled at my bridal shower. She smiled the morning of the wedding when I came down the aisle in a dress I had paid for myself. The smile never reached her eyes. 6 months after our wedding, Xavier died of a heart attack at his desk. The funeral was the largest I had ever attended. Senators came. Pastors flew in from 3 states. Donovan held my hand through every speech. I cried for Xavier the way you cry for a father. Skylar did not cry. She received condolences with the steady grace of a woman who had been preparing to be a widow for a long time. From that day forward, she decided I was the problem in her son's life. The first Sunday tea was 9 days later. Skylar Winston did not yell. She did not slam doors. That would have been beneath her. Her cruelty came in soft, precise sentences delivered over tea in china cups that had been in the family since 1912. The first one came 2 weeks after we returned from our honeymoon, the Sunday after Xavier's burial. She poured my cup, smiled, and said, "I do hope you are not planning to keep working much longer, dear. The Winston wives have always understood that running a home is a full-time calling." I smiled back and said I loved my job. She said, "Of course you do. It must feel important." Then she changed the subject to her gardener's roses. I drove home that afternoon and replayed the sentence in my head. I told Donovan about it that night. He sighed. He said his mother was just lonely after his father's death. He said she would warm up. She did not warm up. She froze harder. The next Sunday, she asked me whether my college had been an accredited one or one of those online programs. The Sunday after that, she complimented my mother's casserole at the rehearsal dinner, then added that it had been very brave of her to bring something homemade to such a formal event. The Sunday after that, she suggested I might consider a softer hairstyle, something less aggressive. Each cut was small. Each cut bled. For a year, I told myself she would adjust. I told myself grief made people sharp. I told myself that the woman who had raised the man I loved could not be entirely heartless. I was wrong about all of it. Donovan and I had been trying for a baby for almost a year before it happened. 2 pink lines on a Tuesday morning in our bathroom. He cried. I cried. We waited until month 4 to tell anyone when the doctor said we were safely past the risky weeks. We told Skylar over Sunday tea. I had baked a small cake with 2 tiny booties on top. Donovan beamed. I held my breath. Skylar set down her teacup. She looked at the cake. She looked at my stomach. Then she said 2 words, "So soon." She did not say congratulations. She did not stand. She did not hug her son. She said, "So soon," and then asked whether we had thought through the impact on Donovan's career trajectory. Donovan laughed nervously and said the timing was perfect. I said nothing. I drove home that afternoon with my hand on my stomach, telling my baby I was sorry for the room I had just brought her into. That was the moment Skylar decided I was no longer just a problem. I was a threat. The next Sunday, the chamomile arrived. By month 5, the Sunday teas changed. Skylar started inviting only me. She said Donovan was working too hard. She said it was a chance for the 2 of us to bond, woman to woman, mother to daughter. She made a special chamomile blend she said was good for expectant mothers. She called it her grandmother's recipe. She kept it in a small glass jar with a handwritten label. She poured my cup herself every time before I even sat down. Within 20 minutes of drinking it each week, I would feel my eyelids growing heavy. My speech would slow. I would forget what we had been talking about mid-sentence. Skylar would smile and say it was the pregnancy hormones. She would walk me to my car. She would tell me to drive carefully. I came home foggy. I slept 14 hours. Donovan started to worry. Then Skylar started to worry to him. She would call him after each visit and say things like, "Donovan, your wife seems unwell. she forgot her own name today. Or, Jessica mentioned again that she is not sure she wants this baby. I never said that. I never said anything close to that. Donovan began watching me more carefully. He started asking about my appointments. He asked if I had thought about therapy. The man I married, who used to bring me tea in bed, now looked at me like a stranger. Something was very wrong. By month 6, Skylar had begun telling other family members that Donovan had married a fragile woman. She told her bridge club that I was struggling. She told the pastor's wife that she worried for the baby. She told her oldest sister, on a phone call she did not bother to take into another room, that the baby would probably be born unwell because of my nerves. Then she dropped the line that broke me. She told my sister-in-law Patricia at a luncheon that she was not even sure the baby was Donovan's. Patricia called me that night, crying with a kind of glee disguised as concern. "Jessica," she said, "is there something you need to tell my brother? Mom says you have been distant lately. She says you have been seeing a man at your office." I sat on the floor of my closet and listened to her speak. I did not defend myself. I did not cry. I let her finish her speech. Then I told her I would call her back. I never did. I sat there in the dark for an hour. My baby kicked once, soft and steady, like she was checking on me. I put my hand on my stomach. I made her a promise. I told her that whoever was doing this to her mother would not get to do it for one more month. Then I started thinking. That night, Donovan was working late. I sat alone in our kitchen with the empty cup of chamomile. Skylar had sent home with me in her grandmother's small glass jar. I had been about to brew a fresh cup. I stopped. For the first time in 5 months, I really looked at the jar. The color of the loose leaves was slightly wrong. It was darker than chamomile should be, a brownish green instead of a soft yellow. There were tiny white specks throughout that I had assumed were dried flower petals. They were not flower petals. I lifted the jar to my nose. Underneath the sweet floral smell, there was something else. Something faintly chemical. Something I had smelled before in the medicine cabinet of every drugstore I had ever walked past. I poured the contents into the sink and washed it down with hot water. I rinsed the jar 3 times. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty jar for a long time. I thought about every Sunday. I thought about every fog. I thought about every phone call Skylar had made to my husband. I thought about Patricia's voice saying, "Mom says you have been seeing a man." I was not losing my mind. I was being walked toward losing it. By a woman in pearl earrings who poured tea with a steady hand. Then I thought, who else knew? The next morning, our housekeeper Marisol arrived. Marisol had worked for the Winston family for 19 years since before Donovan started high school. Skylar had loaned her to us when Donovan and I bought our home. Marisol was quiet, kind, and the only person in that family who ever asked how I was actually doing. That morning, she set down her bag, looked at me carefully, and said in a low voice, "Mrs. Jessica, can I speak with you privately?" I closed the kitchen door behind us. I sat down. I told her I was listening. Marisol pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady. She showed me a series of voice memos. Each one was dated. Each one was a recording of Skylar on the phone in her kitchen, talking to someone she paid in cash to create text messages on a burner phone connected to my number. There were 11 recordings. Marisol whispered, "She offered me $5,000 2 weeks ago to throw away your tea jars without looking at them." I told her yes. I did not throw them away. I kept them. They are in my closet. I sat down very slowly. Marisol was not finished. She looked at me with the tired eyes of a woman who had carried a secret for too long. "Mrs. Jessica," she said, "she did this to the first one too." "The first what?" I asked. "The first wife." There was a first wife. I did not know. Marisol told me the story over coffee neither of us drank. Donovan had been married once before at 24 to a woman named Elena. Donovan had been young, in love, and certain. Elena had been a nurse from Worcester whose father was a mechanic. Skylar had hated her. Within 18 months, Elena had developed what Skylar called nervous troubles. She had started forgetting things. She had started sleeping in the afternoon. She had started crying at family dinners for no reason anyone could name. Skylar had told everyone, in her quiet, sympathetic voice, that Elena was simply not strong enough for the Winston life. Elena and Donovan had divorced quietly. Elena had moved back to Worcester. Donovan had buried the entire chapter so deeply that I had been married to him for 2 years and never heard her name. Marisol had worked in the house through all of it. She had watched Skylar make Elena's tea every Sunday. She had watched Elena fade. She had been too young, too afraid, and too dependent on her job to say anything then. "I should have spoken 19 years ago," Marisol said. "I am speaking now." She slid her phone across the table. "Take everything. Use it. I have copies." I took the phone. I had a name now, a pattern, a witness. I had a war to plan. That night I did not tell Donovan. I could not. Not yet. He had loved Elena. He had buried her in his own way. If I came at him with a story about his mother and his first wife and chemical fog in pregnancy tea, he would hear it as a wife losing her mind, which was exactly what Skylar had been preparing him to hear. I needed proof he could not argue with. I drove that night to a 24-hour urgent care across town. I told the intake nurse I had reason to believe I had been dosed without consent. I asked for a full toxicology screen. I gave them blood. I gave them urine. I paid in cash so it would not appear on insurance Skylar had ever paid for. The doctor was a cautious young woman with kind eyes. She did not ask many questions. She wrote 3 sentences on my chart and ordered the panel. 2 days later, the results came back to my private email. Trace levels of an over-the-counter sleep aid. Diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in nighttime cold medicine. Not enough to harm the baby. Not enough to register on any standard prenatal panel. But more than enough to make a woman my size foggy, slow, forgetful, and easy to gaslight. I printed the results 3 times. I put 1 copy in my office safe. Then I called a lawyer. I did not call any lawyer. I called Xavier Winston's lawyer. His name was Andrew Greer. I had met him exactly once at the wake, where he had pressed my hand and told me Xavier had spoken of me often. I had taken his card out of politeness and slipped it into my desk drawer. It had been sitting there for almost 2 years. He took my call within 15 minutes. When I told him my name, his voice changed. "Jessica," he said. "Your father-in-law called me a month before he passed. He left an envelope here for you. He said you would come asking questions one day. He told me when you did, I should give you everything inside." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "What is in it?" I asked. "Mrs. Winston," he said gently. "I think you should come read it yourself." Andrew Greer drove the envelope to my office that afternoon. He met me in a small conference room on my floor and closed the door himself. He set the envelope in front of me. It was thick. The seal was Xavier's wax stamp, the one I had seen on his Christmas cards. "Take your time," he said. "I will wait outside." I sat there alone for a long minute before I broke the seal. What was inside changed everything. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a copy of the prenuptial agreement Donovan and I had signed before our wedding. I remembered signing it. I had read it carefully at the time. It was standard. Or so I had thought. There was a clause near the back in small print that I had not read closely. It had been added by Xavier himself in his own hand 3 days before our wedding. The clause voided any inheritance benefits, distributions, or trust access to any family member proven to have interfered with our marriage through documented fraud, deception, or harm. It named no one. It did not need to. The second document was a handwritten letter from Xavier. "Jessica," it began. "If you are reading this, it means my wife has done what she did before. Elena was a sweet woman. I failed her. I told myself my wife was simply difficult. I let it pass. I will not let it pass with you. I have set up the clause. I have left instructions with Andrew. The trust will obey it. Protect yourself. Protect your child. I am sorry I am not there. I would have stood beside you. Xavier." I read the letter 4 times. I did not cry until the 3rd reading. Xavier had known. He had seen it coming. He had built the trap before he died. All I had to do now was bait it and spring it in front of witnesses. I did not tell Donovan that week. I did not tell him the week after. I needed evidence so complete that even a man who loved his mother could not look away from it. I called a private security company. I told them I needed small, discreet cameras installed in our home, in places no one would think to look. The bookshelf, the kitchen herb rack, the corner of the dining room where Skylar liked to set her purse during her visits, the kitchen counter where the kettle lived. I asked for high-definition, 24-hour recording with cloud backup that only I could access. I paid for the premium service. I did not put it on a joint account. The technician finished the install on a Wednesday. By Sunday, I had my first recording. Skylar arrived at 1 in the afternoon for tea. I was working in my office. She let herself in with her key. She walked straight to the kitchen. She put her purse on the counter beside the kettle. She opened her purse. She took out a small dropper bottle. She uncapped it. She put 8 drops into the chamomile tin she had brought me a fresh batch of 2 weeks earlier. She capped the bottle. She returned it to her purse. She washed her hands. She had been doing it in my own kitchen the whole time. The footage was perfect. Marisol agreed to bring me every recording, every voice memo, every photo she could safely capture from Skylar's home. We met every Tuesday at a coffee shop 10 minutes from the Winston estate. She brought a USB drive. I brought cash. We never spoke for more than 15 minutes. I went to Skylar's house twice a week alone, exactly as before. I sipped only water. I poured the chamomile into the potted fern beside her chair when she turned her back. I let my speech grow slower. I let my eyelids grow heavier. I let Skylar believe she was winning. She grew bolder. She began reaching for the dropper while I sat 10 feet away. She stopped, hiding the bottle inside her purse, and started keeping it in the side pocket of her cardigan. She started leaving the door cracked open when she dosed the kettle. She had become so confident in her invisibility that she had stopped checking for witnesses. The cameras caught all of it. Skylar called Donovan one evening in early November and told him she was preparing something he needed to see at Thanksgiving. She told him she had hired a private investigator. She told him she had proof. Donovan told me that night. His voice was tight. He said his mother was being dramatic. He said he loved me. Behind his eyes, the doubt sat there, waiting. I started preparing. Andrew Greer helped me draft a portfolio of my own. We met 3 times in his office over the next 2 weeks. He went over each document with the care of a man who had spent 30 years in courtrooms. Inside the new portfolio I assembled were 6 things: the toxicology report from the urgent care, with the doctor's signature, and the lab letterhead. A USB drive with 12 weeks of camera footage from my own kitchen, edited into a 4-minute supercut by a discreet technician Andrew recommended. The voice memo recordings Marisol had taken from inside Skylar's home, transferred to a second USB. A signed and notarized affidavit from Marisol describing the bribe Skylar had offered her, dated and witnessed. A copy of the prenup clause Xavier had written with the relevant section highlighted in yellow. A letter from Andrew Greer himself, addressed to Donovan as primary trustee, summarizing all of it in 2 clear pages and citing the trust provisions that would be triggered the moment Donovan acknowledged the contents. I bought a portfolio that looked almost identical to the one Skylar carried to family events. Cream linen, silver clasp, embossed corner. Skylar had given me one similar to it as a wedding gift and never noticed I had not used it. Now I would use it. I rehearsed the morning of the swap 3 times in my head before bed. Thanksgiving was 4 days away. I drove to Skylar's house at 9 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. The sky was a bright autumn gray. The maples on her drive had dropped their leaves into red drifts along the gravel. I parked behind the kitchen. She opened the door before I knocked. She looked surprised to see me. "Jessica," she said, "you are early." I smiled, the soft, tired smile I had been wearing for months. I wanted to help with the table settings. The doctor told me to stay active. She studied me for a moment. Then she stepped aside. "How thoughtful, dear." She made me a cup of tea. I held it. I did not drink it. She told me she wanted to shower and dress before the guests arrived. She would only be 20 minutes. I told her to take her time. The moment I heard the bathroom door close upstairs, I was moving. Her bedroom was at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar. The cream linen portfolio was sitting on the velvet chair beside her closet, her initials embossed in small gold letters at the corner. Exactly where Marisol had said it would be. I had 22 minutes. I unbuckled the silver clasp just enough to lift the top page. A printout of fake text messages, formatted to look real, between me and a man named David. I did not read further. I started the swap. I lifted out her papers in one stack and slipped them into the inside lining of my coat, which I had unstitched along one seam 2 nights earlier and were sewn loosely with a slip pocket. The papers fit smoothly inside. The coat showed nothing. I lifted my own portfolio from my tote bag. I opened it. I lifted the contents in one stack. I placed them inside Skylar's portfolio in the same order. The Bay toxicology report on top, exactly where her fake text printout had been. I refastened the silver clasp exactly as it had been. I checked the angle of the portfolio on the velvet chair. I matched it to the photo I had taken on my phone the moment I walked in. I went back downstairs. I rinsed her teacup. I poured the chamomile down the sink. I refilled the kettle with fresh water from the filtered tap. I walked the salad forks to the dining room and began setting the table at every place. Skylar came down 12 minutes later in her pearl earrings, a navy silk dress, and the small gold cross her mother had left her. She smelled like the same perfume she had worn to my wedding. "You are an angel for helping," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. I smiled, of course. She walked into the kitchen and saw the teacup, clean and dry. She did not pause. She had no idea. By 6 in the evening, 14 people were seated at Skylar's Thanksgiving table. Donovan's brother Charles and his wife Beth, Patricia and her husband Greg, 2 of Xavier's old business partners, Robert and his wife Jean, and James, who had come alone since his wife had passed in the spring, a cousin from Connecticut named Helena who flew in every year, Skylar's pastor, Reverend Caldwell, who had served the Winston family for 30 years, Skylar's oldest friend, a woman named Margot, who had introduced Skylar to Xavier in 1972. Donovan sat at her right. I sat across from her, my hands folded over my belly. Skylar had sat me directly opposite herself, in the seat she always reserved for the person she planned to interrogate. Donovan reached under the table and squeezed my hand. He whispered, "Are you all right?" I nodded. I squeezed back. The first courses came out. Roasted squash soup. A green salad with pomegranate. Marisol moved quietly between the kitchen and the dining room, carrying plates with the practiced calm of a woman who had served 20 Thanksgivings in this exact room. Marisol caught my eye once as she set down the bread basket. She gave me the smallest nod. The clock on the mantel struck the half hour. Skylar set down her napkin. She lifted her wine glass. She tapped the rim with her silver knife. The room went quiet. "Before we eat," Skylar said, her voice carrying down the long table, "I think my son deserves to know exactly who he married." The smile was on her face. The smile she had worn the day she said, "So soon." The smile she had worn at the wake, at the wedding, at every Sunday tea. The smile that did not reach her eyes. The room turned toward her. Patricia's fork paused above her plate. Robert's wife Jean glanced at her husband. Reverend Caldwell folded his hands. Skylar lifted the cream linen portfolio from beside her chair. She placed it in front of Donovan with both hands, ceremonious, almost tender, the way a priest places a holy book. "Read it, sweetheart," she said. "I am sorry. I would not bring this to you tonight if I were not certain." Donovan did not move. He looked at the portfolio. He looked at me. I held his gaze for one long second. I nodded once. He unbuckled the silver clasp. He opened the cover. The first page was the toxicology report, the lab letterhead, my name, the date, the list of substances detected in my bloodstream during my second trimester of pregnancy. Donovan's face did not change for a full 3 seconds. Then it changed. He looked up at his mother. "Mom," he said, his voice flat. "What is this?" Skylar's smile cracked at the corners. "That is not what I gave you," Skylar said. Her voice had risen by half a step. The room had not noticed yet. "I know," Donovan said. He turned the next page. A still from the camera in the dining room corner. Skylar standing beside the kitchen counter, her hand holding the small dropper bottle, the kettle in the foreground. Patricia leaned forward and looked at the image. Her mouth opened. She did not speak. Donovan turned the next page. A second still. Skylar uncapping the bottle. A third. Skylar squeezing 8 drops into the chamomile tin. A fourth. Skylar washing her hands at the sink. He turned the next page. A printed transcript of one of Marisol's voice memos. Skylar on the phone, in her own kitchen, instructing a man to send fake text messages from a burner number. The man's voice was redacted. Skylar's was not. He turned the next page. Marisol's signed and notarized affidavit. 2 clean pages. Her signature at the bottom. A notary stamp. A date. Reverend Caldwell set down his wine glass. The small clink it made on the china seemed to fill the room. Skylar's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. She tried to speak. She tried to reach for the portfolio. "Donovan," she said. "Stop. Please stop." Donovan did not stop. He turned the next page. And the next. And the next. The kitchen door swung open. Marisol stepped through it carrying a covered serving dish. Her face was calm, her hands were steady, she was wearing the same gray uniform she had worn to the Winston Thanksgiving table for 19 years. She set the dish on the sideboard. She did not leave the room. She stood at the edge of the wall, her hands folded in front of her apron, and she looked directly at Skylar. The dish was empty. We had agreed on the prop the week before. Skylar saw her. The recognition flickered across her face. She understood in that moment that the affidavit on the page in front of Donovan was real. She understood that her bribe had failed. She understood that the woman she had trusted to be invisible for 19 years had been watching the entire time. Patricia whispered, "Mom, what did you do?" Skylar did not answer Patricia. She looked at me. "Jessica," she said, "what have you done?" I stood. The candles flickered. My hand stayed on my stomach. My voice was even. "I drank the tea you gave me for 6 months," I said. "I went to a doctor. I have the lab work. I have the recordings. I have a witness. I have a letter from your husband. And I have the clause he wrote into our prenup 3 days before our wedding." Skylar sat down hard. The doorbell rang. Marisol moved to answer it. She returned 30 seconds later with Andrew Greer, who walked into the dining room with the quiet authority of a man who had walked into difficult rooms his entire career. He carried a slim leather case file under one arm. He nodded to Donovan. He nodded to me. He did not look at Skylar. "Mr. Winston," he said, addressing Donovan by his married name, the name he had inherited from his father. "Your father instructed me to deliver this in this exact circumstance. I have waited 3 years to honor his request." Andrew opened the case file and removed a sealed envelope. He handed it to Donovan. Donovan set down the portfolio. He took the envelope. He broke his father's wax seal. He read the letter inside. He read it twice. Then he passed it to Robert, his father's oldest business partner. Robert read it. His expression did not change. He had been a trustee of the Winston Family Trust for 40 years. He knew exactly what the letter meant. He looked across the table at Skylar. His voice was quiet. "Skylar," Robert said, "per the trust your husband structured, your monthly distributions are suspended pending review. Your access to the foundation accounts is frozen. The clause has been triggered. We will convene the trustees Monday morning." Skylar's pearl earrings caught the candlelight as her hand began to shake. Donovan did not yell at his mother that night. He did not even raise his voice. He stood up slowly. He walked around the long table. He took my coat from the back of my chair. He held it open for me. He helped me into it, the way he had helped me into it on our first date. He turned to the room. "My wife and I are going home," he said. He took my hand. He led me out through the front hall. Marisol followed us with my purse and Andrew's case file. We did not look back. The last thing I heard, as the front door clicked shut, was Reverend Caldwell quietly asking Patricia to please pass him the water. We left Skylar sitting at the head of her own Thanksgiving table, while 14 guests stared at the portfolio she had thought would destroy me. In the car, Donovan drove for 10 minutes without speaking. Then he pulled over on a quiet residential street, put the car in park, and turned to me. He did not apologize for his mother. He did not apologize for himself. He did one better. He put his hand on my stomach. He looked me in the eye. "I should have seen it," he said. "I am so sorry I did not see it. I will spend the rest of my life seeing you." I cried then, for the first time in months. The next morning, Andrew Greer filed a formal request with the trustees. Within 3 weeks, Skylar's monthly distributions were permanently revoked. She was forced to sell her summer house in Maine to maintain the estate. The Winston Foundation, which she had chaired for 20 years, replaced her with Patricia, who has not returned her mother's calls since the day the trust voted. Helena, the cousin from Connecticut, wrote me a long letter apologizing for every cold dinner she had ever sat through and said nothing about. Reverend Caldwell sent a card from the church saying he was praying for our family and for our daughter. Margot, Skylar's oldest friend, did not write. Marisol gave her notice from Skylar's household the following Monday and came to work for us full-time. She has her own apartment above our garage now, paid for by Donovan. She made the curtains in the nursery herself. We named our daughter Willa, after her grandfather. She was born healthy in February, 6 pounds and 12 ounces, with my eyes in Donovan's slow, honest smile. Skylar has not met her. She has sent 3 letters and a small silver rattle. The rattle is in a closet. The letters are in a drawer. Maybe one day I will read them. Maybe one day I will not. Some doors do not need to be opened just because someone is finally knocking. The cardinal on Xavier's old window feeder still comes every morning. If you were sitting at that Thanksgiving table, would you have stopped her at the very first sentence, or let her read every page out loud? Tell me in the comments. My aunt clinked her wine glass against mine at my grandmother's memorial dinner. Cheers to Nora the trash queen, she said. Her recycling obsession finally came in handy. She brought trash bags. The room laughed. Not loudly at first. Just that soft family laugh that tells you everyone knows you are the joke, but they want you to pretend you are part of it. I was standing beside the buffet table holding a tray of my grandmother's favorite lemon cakes. My black dress still smelled faintly of rain. My hands were cold. My cousin Tessa had taken the seat meant for me beside my mother, then placed her designer purse on the chair like it had more right to comfort than I did. My Uncle Reddington smiled at me from the head of the table. That smile should have warned me. He raised his glass next. To family, he said, and to people who know their place. My mother looked down. My brother Cameron looked at his phone. My father was not there. He had died 4 years earlier, right after telling me Grandma had left me something important. He never got to say what. Then Uncle Reddington pulled a brown envelope from inside his jacket and tapped it against his glass. As executor of my mother's estate, he said, I think we should clear up one embarrassing misunderstanding tonight. Every eye turned to me. My stomach tightened, because I knew that envelope. And I knew, with sudden horror, that it was not the will, it was the lie he had built around it. My name is Nora Vaughn. I am 36 years old, and for most of my life, my family treated me like a stain that refused to wash out. Not a disaster. Not a criminal. Nothing dramatic enough to earn a movie soundtrack. Just inconvenient. I was the girl who cared too much. The one who rescued broken chairs from curbs. The one who washed glass jars and reused ribbons from birthday gifts. The one who started a recycling startup before recycling became a trending word people printed on expensive tote bags. My grandmother understood me. Her name was Eleanor Vaughn, and she could turn soup bones into dinner, ripped curtains into quilts, and silence into a warning. She had hands like tree roots and eyes that made liars check their posture. She called my business practical magic. Everyone else called it trash. My company, Second Life Materials, collected waste fabric, plastic packaging, old furniture, and damaged stock from local businesses. We turned it into school desks, storage crates, insulation panels, and affordable home goods. Not glamorous, not gala-worthy, but clean, useful, real. Uncle Reddington sold luxury developments and gave speeches about sustainability while tearing down old neighborhoods. My cousin Tessa ran his public image. She posted photos beside plants she did not water and called herself an eco-conscious executive. My family loved them. They were rich, they were polished, they knew how to smile for cameras. I knew how to read invoices. That difference would matter later. But at Grandma's memorial dinner, they still believed the person holding lemon cakes had no power at all. Then Reddington opened the envelope. Reddington cleared his throat like a judge in a cheap courtroom. My mother was worried before she passed, he said. Worried about Nora's judgment. A tiny sound left my mother's mouth. Not protest. Fear. Reddington continued. She knew Nora had been asking questions about the old factory lot, the one behind the river, and she knew Nora believed she was promised it. My heart slammed once. The factory lot. My grandmother's old textile warehouse. 10 acres of cracked concrete, rusted beams, and history. My family saw decay. I saw a recycling plant, a training center, an affordable workspace for women rebuilding their lives. Grandma had shown it to me 6 months before she died. This land is not trash, she told me, is waiting. Reddington held up a folded document. This is a signed statement from my mother confirming Nora was never promised the property. He looked at me, enjoying every breath, and that Nora has been misrepresenting family assets to investors. The room sharpened. My brother finally looked up. Tessa whispered, "Oh my God." I set down the tray. "That's not true," I said. Reddington sighed. "Nora, this is a memorial. Don't make it ugly." That was funny, in a dead little way. He had brought a weapon to a dinner table and accused me of bleeding on the linen. My mother whispered, "Please sit down." I did not. I looked at the signature. My grandmother's name was there. But the E was wrong. Grandma never looped her E. I knew because she had written me letters every month since I was 9. And suddenly, Reddington's lie had a loose thread. I did not shout. Shouting is what guilty people expect you to do. It gives them smoke to hide inside. Instead, I walked to Reddington and held out my hand. "May I see it?" He laughed. No, that single word told me more than the whole speech. My Aunt Patricia leaned forward. "Nora, stop embarrassing yourself." Tessa smiled with glossy lips. Some people confuse ambition with entitlement. I looked at her purse in my chair, then back at her. "Move your bag." Her smile flickered. "What?" That was my seat. The room went quiet. It was small, petty, maybe, but after 36 years of being stepped over, sometimes the revolution begins with upholstery. Tessa picked up the purse and moved it like she was handling a dead rat. I sat down. Reddington tucked the paper back into his jacket. "Good," he said. "Now we can discuss the actual plan." That was the second mistake. He announced that the factory lot would be sold to Von Nova Properties, his own company, for redevelopment, a green luxury complex he called it, solar panels, rooftop gardens, recycled branding, apartments starting at $8,000 a month. He smiled like a saint. Then he added, "To honor Mother, of course." My grandmother had once said, luxury developers could put bamboo in a lobby and call greed sustainable. I almost laughed. Then Reddington said, "We break ground in 8 weeks. 8 weeks. That meant permits were filed, contracts signed, money already moving. And if he was willing to forge Grandma's name at her memorial dinner, he had done worse before dessert. After dinner, my mother followed me into the hallway. The restaurant had gold mirrors, soft carpet, and the kind of lighting that makes lies look expensive. "Nora," she said, "please don't fight Reddington." I turned. "Did Grandma sign that paper?" Her face changed. "Not enough for a stranger to notice. Enough for a daughter." "I don't know," she said. "That hurt worse than yes. You don't know, or you don't want to know." She folded her hands. "Your uncle handled everything after your grandmother got sick. He paid the nurses. He arranged the lawyer. He was there." "I was there too." Her eyes filled. "You were always busy with that company." "That company." The company that paid her mortgage for 14 months after Dad died. The company I had nearly lost because every spare dollar went to family emergencies that somehow always passed through Reddington first. I almost said that. But the hallway door opened and Cameron walked out. My brother had my father's height and my mother's talent for avoiding hard rooms. "Reddington says you're threatening legal action," he said. "I haven't said anything to Reddington." "Then don't." I stared at him. "Grandma promised me that land." Cameron's jaw tightened. Grandma said a lot of things when she was sick. That sentence landed like a slap. Grandma had been sharp until the end. She forgot names sometimes, yes. She never forgot character. I stepped closer. "Who told you she was confused?" Cameron looked away. There it was. Reddington had not only forged a paper, he had rewritten a dead woman's mind, and my family had helped him hold the pen. I went home that night and opened the blue metal cookie tin under my bed. Inside were Grandma's letters. 27 years of them. Birthday notes, recipes, angry clippings about city council corruption. A postcard from a bus trip to Niagara Falls where she wrote, "Water is patient, but it wins." I spread them across my apartment floor. The E never looped. Not once. At 2:14 a.m., I found the letter that changed everything. It was dated 9 months before she died. "Nora, if Reddington smiles too much after I am gone, start at the basement wall behind the furnace. Your grandfather trusted brick more than bankers. So do I." I read it 6 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my 87-year-old grandmother had left a treasure map clue like she was starring in a retired women heist movie. At 7 the next morning, I drove to her old house. It was locked. A real estate sign had already been planted in the yard. Von Nova Properties, of course. I walked around back in the rain and found the basement window. When we were children, Cameron and I used to sneak inside that way after sledding. Reddington had never fit through it. One of the few childhood advantages of being underestimated and skinny. The latch was old. The glass shook. I climbed in, scraped my knee, landed in a pile of dust, and whispered, "Sorry, Grandma." The basement smelled like damp wood and old soap. Behind the furnace was a brick wall. One brick was lighter than the rest. Behind it was a metal box. Inside was a flash drive, 3 envelopes, and a note. "Play this only when they lie." I did not play the flash drive at home. That sounds dramatic, but it was mostly practical. My laptop was old and wheezed like it smoked 2 packs a day. I took it to my office. Second Life Materials operated out of a converted laundromat between a closed nail salon and a bakery that sold bread so good it made people forgive parking tickets. My team was small. 7 employees, 4 women, 2 former warehouse workers Reddington had laid off during green restructuring. 1 retired teacher named Miss Lila who ran operations and scared vendors by using complete sentences. When I walked in, my production manager Jada looked at my muddy shoes. Basement or emotional collapse, family basement. Worse. I gave her the flash drive. Jada had worked in IT before leaving a tech company where a man named Brant took credit for her code and told her she should smile more in meetings. She plugged the drive into an offline laptop. A folder appeared. Videos, audio, scanned documents. One file was titled, Reddington, Do Not Trust. Jada leaned back. Your grandma was not playing. No, I said. She was filing. We opened the first video. Grandma appeared on screen in her kitchen, wearing a purple cardigan and the expression of a woman who had already survived everyone watching. Nora, she said, if you are seeing this, my son has done exactly what I feared. My throat closed. Then she said the line that turned grief into fire. Reddington is not selling the factory because it is useless. He is selling it because he buried proof there. The video was 23 minutes long. Grandma spoke slowly, clearly, and with receipts. Years earlier, Reddington had used the old factory to dump construction waste from his luxury projects. Not just wood and brick, chemical sealants, treated materials, contaminated runoff tanks, things that should have been processed safely. It saved him millions. Then he covered the records. Grandma had discovered it when a retired site manager came to her terrified and sick. He gave her copies of disposal logs before dying 2 months later. I wanted to go to the city, Grandma said in the video, but Reddington threatened to have me declared incompetent. My stomach turned. He said nobody would believe an old woman. Jada whispered, I hate him professionally. Grandma continued, I changed my will. The factory goes to Nora through a trust. Reddington is removed as executor if he attempts to sell, transfer, or conceal environmental records. I grabbed the arm of the chair. There was a will. A real one. One envelope held a notarized copy. The second held photos of dumping sites. The third held a letter to my father. I opened it with shaking hands. Eli, if Nora is standing alone when this comes out, stand with her. She has always been the spine of this family, even when we treated her like the broom closet. My father never saw the letter, because Reddington had taken Grandma's papers after the funeral. Jada touched my shoulder. I stared at the video. Grandma looked into the camera and smiled sadly. One more thing, Nora. Your mother knows more than she thinks she knows. Then the video cut off, and my phone rang. It was Reddington. Reddington did not greet me. People who think they own rooms often think greetings are optional. You broke into the house, he said. I looked at Jada. She mouthed, speaker. I tapped the button. I entered my grandmother's property, I said. It belongs to the estate. Does it? A pause, small but delicious. He recovered fast. You are unstable, Nora. This obsession with trash has warped you. I almost admired the effort. He said trash like it had personally keyed his car. You announced forged documents at a memorial dinner, I said. He laughed. Careful. There it was again, that family word, careful. It means, let me hurt you quietly. It means, do not make the truth expensive. It means, remember how alone you are. Reddington lowered his voice. Your little company depends on municipal contracts, permits, waste handling licenses, reputation. A whisper can do damage. Jada's eyes narrowed. I said, is that a threat? No. It's advice from someone who understands power. I wrote that down. Advice from someone who understands power. Wonderful. Men like Reddington love narrating their own evidence. He continued. You will sign a statement confirming my mother never promised you the factory. In return, I will allow you to continue operating without interference. Allow me? Yes. The room went cold. My employees were sorting recycled plastic 15 feet away. People who showed up early, worked hard, and believed trash could become something useful. Reddington was threatening their jobs because I had found a box. I said, send it in writing. He laughed. Then he did, by email. Subject line, family resolution. Some men are not villains, they are evidence with cufflinks. The next morning, everything started breaking. Our city pickup contract was suspended for review. A supplier canceled. A local business group removed me from a sustainability panel and replaced me with Tessa, who had once called compost wet garbage, with confidence. Then a video appeared online. It showed me climbing through Grandma's basement window. The caption read, "Local business owner breaks into dead grandmother's home during estate dispute." By noon, it had 12,000 views. By 3, 50,000. By evening, Tessa had posted a sad selfie. "Family conflict is heartbreaking," she wrote, "but exploiting grief for money is never okay. Protect elders, protect legacy." She added a green heart. A green heart. The woman could turn gaslighting into a Canva template. The comments were ugly. People called me greedy, bitter, crazy. One man wrote, "This is why women shouldn't run companies based on feelings." Jada printed that one and taped it to the break room fridge under a sign that said, "Men who fear bins." Dark humor is not healing exactly, but it keeps you from throwing chairs. At 7 p.m. my mother called. "Nora," she whispered, "Reddington says you stole things from the house." "Did he say what?" "No." "Did you ask?" Silence. "Of course not." Then she said, "He says if you stop now he won't press charges." I closed my eyes. "Mom, did Grandma ever tell you she changed the will?" Her breath caught, and in that tiny sound, I heard the answer she was still too scared to say. My mother came to my office the next day wearing sunglasses indoors. It was raining, so the sunglasses were not fashion. They were armor. Miss Lila let her in without a word, then stood close enough to hear everything. Retired teachers do not gossip. They supervise truth. My mother sat across from me. For a full minute she stared at the floor. Then she said, "Your grandmother asked me to witness something." My hands went still. "When?" 2 months before she died." "What was it?" "A will, I think." "You think?" Her mouth trembled. "Reddington came in before I could sign. He was furious. He told your grandmother she was being manipulated by you." I leaned back. "I wasn't even there." "I know." "Then why didn't you say something?" Her face broke in the tired way of women who have been trained to survive by becoming smaller. "Because Reddington said if I helped you, he would stop covering Cameron's debt." The room shifted. "Cameron?" My brother with the clean sneakers, calm voice, and perfect ability to avoid blame. "What debt?" My mother pressed a tissue to her nose. "He lost money, a lot. Crypto, sports betting, one of those online trading groups. Reddington paid it. Your brother said it was temporary." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because every family has one woman called irresponsible while men set money on fire and call it stress. "How much?" she whispered. 400,000. The number sat between us like a body. Then she added, "Reddington used the factory as collateral. My grandmother's land. My inheritance. My future." My mother finally removed her sunglasses. Her left eye was bruised purple. Not from a fist. From shame. Cameron arrived 20 minutes after my mother left. He did not knock. He walked into my office like we still lived in the same house, and my bedroom was a place he could search for phone chargers. "You need to stop," he said. Jada stood in the doorway behind him, holding a wrench for absolutely no reason except dramatic support. I said, "Hello to you too." Cameron lowered his voice. "You have no idea what Reddington can do." "I am starting to." "No, Nora, you're not." He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically. Cameron was still tall, handsome, and unfairly blessed with cheekbones. But fear had made him boyish. "How much do you owe?" I asked. His jaw locked. "So Mom told you." "She told me enough." He laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than me?" "No, I think I pay my debts with money, not Grandma's property." That hit. He stepped closer. "You don't understand what it feels like to fail when everyone expects you to be impressive." I stared at him. For years, my family had treated Cameron like a prince because he wore ambition well. I had built a company from trash and panic and still had to explain why it mattered. "I understand failure," I said. "I just don't understand using an old woman's land as a gambling bandage." He flinched. Then he said, "Reddington has videos of you, emails. He's going to make you look insane." "Let him. You'll lose everything." "Maybe." His face changed, because he finally saw it. I was not bluffing. Then Cameron whispered, "Reddington didn't only forge Grandma's signature." I stood up. "What else did he forge?" Cameron looked toward the door. "Dad's." My father had been dead 4 years. Hearing Cameron say Reddington forged his name felt like someone had opened a grave just to steal the quiet. Cameron sat down. For once he did not look at his phone. "Before Dad died, he found something," Cameron said. "Invoices, dumping logs, payments to shell vendors." He confronted Reddington. "My father had been an accountant, gentle, tired, careful. He hated confrontation so much he once apologized to a vending machine for kicking it. What happened? Reddington said Dad misunderstood. Then Dad started making copies. My throat tightened. Where are they? I don't know. Reddington found out. After Dad's funeral, he took boxes from the garage. I remembered that day. Reddington in shirt sleeves carrying banker's boxes to his SUV while everyone else ate cold pasta and tried not to cry. I had assumed he was helping. That is the worst part about family betrayal. It wears helpful shoes. Cameron continued. Dad had a life insurance policy. Reddington produced a document saying Dad borrowed against it for your business. What? He told Mom you pressured Dad, said you needed money for Second Life, and Dad gave it to you secretly. That's why Mom pulled away after the funeral. I could not speak. For 4 years, my mother had looked at me like grief had a bill attached, and Reddington had sent it in my name. How much? I asked. $280,000. My vision blurred at the edges. Cameron whispered. Nora, I helped him notarize one paper. The room went silent. Then he said, I thought it was just to protect Mom. And there it was. The oldest excuse in the world. I only helped destroy you because I was scared. I told Cameron to leave. He begged, not loudly. Cameron was still too proud for volume. He used desperate politeness, which somehow felt worse. Nora, please. If this goes public, I'm done. I looked at him. You were done when you signed. I didn't know all of it. You knew my name was on a lie. He lowered his head. That was his answer. After he left, Jada walked in and placed a cup of tea on my desk. Do you want comfort or revenge logistics? Both. Excellent. Hydrate first. By noon, we had a warboard in the conference room. Grandma's video. The forged statement. Reddington's threat email. The will copy. Cameron's partial confession, which Jada had recorded because she trusted people exactly as far as their browser history. Then Miss Lila brought in her nephew. His name was Andre, and he was an environmental attorney with calm eyes and the kind of suit that said student loans had been defeated through violence. He reviewed the documents for 2 hours. When he finished, he leaned back. This is not an estate fight, he said. What is it? Environmental fraud? Elder coercion, possible insurance fraud, forged estate documents, reputational interference, and maybe wire fraud depending on the transfers. Jada smiled. So a buffet. Andre did not smile. Reddington is planning a public groundbreaking next month, right? Yes. With press? Yes. Good. I blinked. Good? He tapped Grandma's video file. Because if he announces development on contaminated land while concealing records, he does not just embarrass himself. Andre looked at me. He buries himself live. We did not run to social media. That surprises people. They think revenge in 2026 means posting a crying video with sad piano music and letting strangers do the rest. That is not revenge. That is weather. Real revenge needs architecture. Andre filed a quiet notice with the State Environmental Office. Not a public accusation. A formal request for review based on inherited documentation. Miss Lila contacted 3 former factory workers. 2 refused to talk. 1 cried on the phone and said, I've been waiting for someone to ask. His name was Mr. Halpern. He was 72, walked with a cane, and had kept copies of every illegal disposal order because, in his words, men like Reddington always think the old guy by the gate can't read. Bless old guys by gates. Jada traced the smear campaign. The basement window video had been taken from a security camera installed by Von Nova, but posted through an anonymous account linked to Tessa's media agency. Tessa had used the same recovery email for a burner account and her wellness newsletter. Her newsletter was called Soft Power Sundays. I said nothing for a full 10 seconds. Then Jada said, I know. The jokes write themselves, but HR says we can only laugh for 3 minutes. Meanwhile, Tessa announced a live-stream series about ethical redevelopment. Episode 1, Healing Land, Healing Families. She used my grandmother's photo in the thumbnail. That was the moment I stopped feeling conflicted. You can attack me, you can mock my company. But if you use a dead woman's face to sell condos on poisoned land, I will become the recycling bin you should have read before throwing away evidence. The public pressure got worse before it got useful. Our warehouse received fake 1-star reviews. Someone called city inspectors on us twice in 1 week. A man in a truck shouted, "Trash Queen," while I was unloading plastic pallets. Jada yelled back, "Better crown than bald tires." Not our most professional moment, but morale improved. Then one of our biggest clients paused their contract. The email was polite. We admire your mission, but cannot risk association during ongoing controversy. Association, that soft corporate word that means, we believe you less than rich people. Payroll was due Friday. I sat in my office staring at numbers that did not care about justice. My employees pretended not to worry, which made it worse. At 6 p.m., Miss Lila came in with a folder. We can defer our checks 1 week, she said. No, Nora. No. She sat down. You always think leadership means bleeding quietly. I looked up. She continued, that is family training, not business training. That sentence should be printed on mugs. I told her I would not let them suffer for my fight. She leaned forward. This became our fight when your uncle threatened our jobs. The next morning, the team arrived wearing homemade shirts. Trash Queen staff. Even Andre wore one under his blazer. A photo of us went viral locally. Not huge, not life-changing, but enough for people to start asking why a luxury developer was punching down at a tiny recycling company. For the first time, the comments changed. Then Tessa made her next mistake. She replied to one comment from her verified account. Some people build the future. Others sort the leftovers. The internet smelled blood. Never insult working people on a public platform while pretending to care about sustainability. That should be taught in business school between accounting and not committing fraud. Tessa's comment spread faster than her skincare routine. Warehouse workers stitched it. Teachers posted classroom recycling bins with the caption, "Proud leftover sorters." A climate activist with 2 million followers reposted it and wrote, "Luxury greenwashing found its villain." By Monday, leftover sorters was trending in our state. By Tuesday, Tessa deleted the comment. By Wednesday, someone found a video of her at a conference saying, "Sustainability has to feel aspirational, not poor." Oh, Tessa, sweet, recyclable nightmare. Sponsors began backing away from the groundbreaking. Von Nova released a statement saying Tessa's words were taken out of context. The context was a microphone and her whole mouth, but fine. Reddington called me that night. I let it go to voicemail. "Nora," he said, voice tight. "You think this is cute? It is not. You are damaging serious business. Call me before I stop being patient." I saved it. Then my mother sent a text. "I found your father's old storage key." A photo followed, a small brass key, a tag attached. Unit 17. I called immediately. "Where did you find it?" "In his toolbox." "Did Reddington know about it?" "I don't think so." A pause. Then she whispered, "Nora, I'm scared." This time I did not soften the truth. "Good," I said. "That means you finally understand who he is." The next morning, Mom and I drove to the storage facility together. Unit 17 smelled like dust, cardboard, and unfinished justice. Inside were 12 bankers' boxes. On the first one, in my father's handwriting, were 3 words. "For Nora only." I sat on the concrete floor and cried before opening the box. Not pretty crying. Not movie crying. The ugly kind where your nose betrays your dignity, and your mother pretends not to notice because she owes you at least that. The first box held my father's copies, invoices, photos, letters, bank statements, a notebook with dates and names. The second box held something worse. My father had written a timeline: Reddington's dumping, Reddington's threats, Grandma's discovery, Cameron's debt, the life insurance lie, and then a page titled, "If I die before I finish." My hands shook. Nora did not borrow from me. Nora did not pressure me. Nora has been paying family expenses from her own company salary since the year after my diagnosis. If anyone says otherwise, ask Reddington why he needed my signature scanned. My mother covered her mouth. She read over my shoulder and made a sound I had never heard from her. A low, broken animal sound. "My God," she whispered. Eli knew. Yes, Dad knew. And he had tried to protect me in the only way a quiet accountant knew how. Documentation. At the bottom of the page was a sentence written darker than the rest. Reddington is planning to use Nora's reputation as cover. He needs her to look unstable before he moves the land. I looked at my mother. She was crying openly now. For once, it's not because she was overwhelmed, because she was ashamed. Then she opened the third box. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to her. She read it. Her face went white. "What?" I asked. She handed it to me. "Your brother did not save Cameron. He created the debt. Reddington had introduced Cameron to the investment group." That was the truth inside my father's letter. Not because he loved him, because he needed control. The group was a private wealth circle that promised early crypto access, sports analytics, and luxury networking. In plain English, rich men gambling with better fonts. Reddington encouraged Cameron to join. Then he lent him money. Then he used the debt to make Cameron sign documents. Then he used Cameron's signatures to support fake estate filings. It was not rescue. It was a leash. My brother had betrayed me. Yes. But Reddington had built the room where betrayal became useful. That did not absolve Cameron. It explained the machinery. Andre met us at the storage unit 2 hours later. He photographed every box, chain of custody, evidence logs, formal affidavits, words that sound boring until they become a sword. My mother signed a statement that day. She wrote that she had witnessed Grandma attempt to execute a revised will. She wrote that Reddington interrupted. She wrote that he later told her Grandma was mentally unsound. She wrote that she believed him because fear was easier than truth. When she finished, her hand was shaking. "I helped him," she said. "Yes," I replied. She flinched. I did not comfort her. Comforting guilty people too quickly is how families recycle harm and call it healing. Then my mother wiped her face. "What do we do now?" I looked at the boxes, at Grandma's video, at Dad's handwriting, at the woman who had finally chosen the right side, late but standing. "We let Reddington invite the cameras," I said. Andre smiled for the first time. The groundbreaking was 9 days away, and Reddington had just announced a surprise memorial tribute to Grandma. Perfect. The groundbreaking had everything rich people use when they want greed to look like progress. White tent, champagne, tiny compostable forks, a banner that said, "The Eleanor District, a sustainable luxury community." My grandmother would have haunted the banner first. Tessa stood near the stage in a cream suit, greeting reporters like she had personally invented sunlight. Cameron stood behind her, pale and sweating. My mother stood beside me, wearing black and holding Dad's storage key like a rosary. Reddington saw us and smiled. Not happily, victoriously. He thought our attendance meant surrender. He walked over. "Nora," he said. "Smart choice. Smile for the cameras and I may still let you keep your little warehouse." My mother stiffened. I said, "You should drink water. Big day." His eyes narrowed. On stage, the mayor praised innovation. A councilman praised green development. A lifestyle influencer praised conscious luxury, which sounded like guilt with marble countertops. Then Tessa introduced the tribute video. "Today," she said, "we honor my grandmother Eleanor, who believed in renewal." The screen lit up. A soft piano began. Old photos appeared. Grandma holding flowers. Grandma at Christmas. Grandma beside the factory in 1978. Then the screen froze. The music stopped. Tessa turned toward the technician. The technician was Jada. She wore a black blazer, a headset, and the expression of a woman who had been waiting all week to ruin a rich man's morning. A new video began. Grandma appeared on screen in her purple cardigan. The crowd quieted. Grandma looked directly into the camera. "If Reddington is playing this at my factory," she said, "then he has lied to all of you." Reddington dropped his champagne. Chaos has a sound. At expensive events, it starts with silverware. A fork falls, a glass taps a plate. Someone whispers, "Is this live?" Grandma continued on the screen. "My son Reddington illegally dumped construction waste on this land. He threatened me when I found out. He tried to take this property from Nora because she would clean it instead of hide it." Reporters lifted cameras. The mayor stopped smiling. Tessa rushed toward the technician table, but Jada held up one finger. "No touching city-approved equipment, beloved." Grandma's video shifted to scanned documents. Dumping logs, photos, names, dates. Then Dad's handwriting appeared on screen. "Nora did not borrow from me." A murmur rolled through the tent. My mother began to cry, but she did not collapse. She stood. That mattered. Reddington lunged toward the stage. Andre stepped in front of him. "Careful," Andre said softly. Reddington froze. "Men like him fear prison." "Yes, but they fear looking poor in public more." The video ended with Grandma's final recording. "Nora, if they call you trash, remember this. Compost grows gardens. Plastic becomes benches. Scrap becomes shelter. The only thing with no second use is a lie after it is exposed." For 1 second, no one moved. Then Mr. Halpern, the old gate worker, stood from the front row. He raised his cane. "I signed those logs," he said, "and I'll testify." That broke the tent. Reporters shouted. The mayor backed away from the banner. Tessa's face turned gray. Reddington looked at me. For the first time in my life, he did not look powerful. He looked recyclable. Reddington tried to leave. He made it 6 steps. Then 2 state environmental investigators approached him. They had not come because of the video. They had come because Andre had made sure they received enough evidence to open a formal site inquiry before the event. The video was not the case. The video was the spotlight. That distinction matters. A reporter shoved a microphone toward Reddington. "Mr. Vaughn, did you knowingly conceal contamination on this land?" Reddington's mouth opened. Nothing came out. A miracle, honestly. Tessa tried to rescue him. "This is a deeply personal family matter," she said. Jada, still at the equipment table, muttered loudly, "So is lead poisoning, apparently." A cameraman laughed. That laugh was the first crack in Tessa's polished mask. Cameron stepped forward next. I did not expect it. His hands trembled. He faced the reporters and said, "I signed documents for Reddington Vaughn under pressure related to debt. I am cooperating with counsel." The crowd erupted again. Reddington turned on him. "You stupid boy." There it was. Not nephew. Not family. Boy. A tool that had broken. Cameron flinched, but he did not step back. My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it. Not forgiveness. Contact. There is a difference. Then the mayor's aide quietly removed the ribbon-cutting scissors from the stage. I do not know why that detail stays with me. Maybe because nothing says collapse like a public official deciding you no longer deserve oversized scissors. By noon, the event was everywhere. By evening, the headline wrote itself. Green luxury project halted after dead owner accuses developer's son in video. Grandma went viral. She would have hated the word. She would have loved the result. The next 3 weeks were not clean. Revenge stories love the moment of exposure, but real consequences arrive with paperwork, lawyers, and coffee that tastes like stress. The state sealed the factory lot pending environmental review. Vaughn Nova's investors froze funding. 2 sponsors publicly cut ties. Tessa's media agency lost 3 clients after old emails leaked, showing she had planned a controlled sympathy campaign against me. Controlled sympathy. That phrase deserves jail time by itself. Reddington resigned from 2 nonprofit boards before they could remove him. He called it stepping back to focus on family. Family, in his mouth, always meant liability. Cameron entered a formal cooperation agreement. He also started attending gambling addiction meetings. I wished him success from a safe distance, which is the most honest kind of wishing I had. My mother asked if she could come to my office. I said yes. She arrived with Grandma's recipe box and Dad's favorite fountain pen. "I should have given you these years ago," she said. "Yes." She nodded. "No excuses. No tears first." That was new. Then she said, "I watched them make you small because it made my life easier." I looked at her. That sentence did not heal us. But it was the first sentence she had ever given me that did not ask me to do emotional labor after being harmed. "I don't know how to fix it," she said. "You don't fix it, you practice differently." She nodded again. Before she left, she walked through the warehouse. She watched women sorting plastic, cutting fabric, sanding damaged wood into clean panels. "This is beautiful," she whispered. I almost said, "It's trash." I did not. Some jokes are too expensive. 6 months later, the court recognized Grandma's revised will. The factory lot was placed in the trust she intended. For me. But by then, I did not want to own it alone. That surprised everyone, especially me. I created the Eleanor Recovery Works, a nonprofit training and manufacturing center focused on recycled building materials, environmental cleanup, and paid apprenticeships for women leaving financial abuse, layoffs, and family businesses that called them dramatic for wanting wages. Miss Lila became director. Jada became head of technology and security, because apparently every revenge arc needs one woman who can find a deleted email and scare a contractor. Mr. Halpern cut the ribbon at the opening. Not the mayor. Not a developer. Not a man in a suit pretending concrete has feelings. An old gate worker with a cane. My mother attended. Cameron did not. He said flowers. No note. That was fine. Tessa tried to rebrand as a failure transparency coach, but the internet kept using her old quote in memes. Someone printed, "Some people sort the leftovers on tote bags and donated the profit to our training center." I bought one. I am petty. Not dead. Reddington settled part of the civil case and faced criminal investigation. His lawyers used phrases like complex regulatory misunderstanding. Grandma's video had a simpler phrase. He lied. At the opening, I stood beside the old factory wall, now cleaned but not polished. We kept some scars visible on purpose. A reporter asked if I felt vindicated. I looked at the women in hard hats behind me. "No," I said. I feel busy. That night, I found one final envelope in Grandma's recipe box. It had my name on it. I opened Grandma's final letter at my kitchen table, with coffee in my favorite chip mug. "Nora," it said, "if this reached you late, forgive an old woman for trusting hiding places more than people." I laughed once, then cried once. Both were fair. She wrote that she had watched me turn discarded things into useful things since I was a child. Broken buttons into doll eyes, cracked bowls into planters, family cruelty into silence. That last one she wrote was the only recycling she regretted teaching me. Do not reuse pain just because it is familiar. I sat with that line for a long time. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Sunday coffee?" I looked at the time. I did not answer right away. I finished my coffee first. That became my rule after everything. Coffee before family, breath before duty, truth before peace. 8 months later, Eleanor Recovery Works shipped its first order of recycled insulation panels to a public school damaged by flooding. The local news called it a climate resilience success story. Jada called it trash with a redemption arc. Miss Lila corrected her and said materials with character. My family is not magically healed. That is not how real life works. My mother is learning. Cameron is rebuilding. Tessa is still posting, but with fewer plants. Reddington is finally discovering that money can buy silence only until someone keeps copies. And me? I no longer sit in chairs cleared for me by people who never wanted me at the table. I build my own tables now, out of reclaimed wood. Strong enough for everyone who was called useless. Wide enough for every leftover sorter. And heavy enough that no liar can move it alone.